Chapter 3: The Macro Timeline. I would like to thank Scarlet Merc for helping me edit this document. Now that we know who most of the important characters are, the next step is to map the timeline. It might be tempting to go directly to the famous massacres of the missing children incident and save them, but the macro timeline of FNAF stretches for decades both before and after these events. They are only two key chapters in a much larger story. My strategy for this chapter is to show how the story begins and ends, so that when we do arrive at the middle, we'll have the Metroidvania power-ups we need to unlock and understand what really happened at Freddy's and Fredbear's, and why. It's best to start a timeline with the most solid point of data, which, in this case, comes from FNAF 2. Jeremy/Michael Afton's checks give us the candidates on November 12th and 13th, 1987 for nights 5 and 6. The 1987 calendar says night 6 of 11/13/87 was one of the infamous Friday the 13ths, which means night 1 at Freddy's was actually Sunday. The years provided by these checks help pinpoint the year of FNAF 1, which must be a sequel to FNAF 2 since FNAF 1's recordings talk about how the Bite of 87 victim has been clinging to life for years now. If the minimum wage stays consistent, the mysterious X'd-out years on FNAF 1's checks should be somewhere around 1993. However, Friday the 13th in November only happens once every few years, and since 1992 is the closest year to 1993 where it appears, I'm saying 1992 as the year in which FNAF 1 takes place. In FNAF 1, Phone Guy's voice claims the animatronics have been singing the same songs for 20 years without ever getting a bath. This suggests 1972 was the origin of Freddy and his gang. However, the coins from Help 1 say Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was established in 1983, 11 years after 1972. So is the 20-year hint still solid? Yes, because there was an earlier restaurant with a very similar yet subtly different name. The location in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator has a back alley that looks just like the one in the Security Puppet minigame, which showed an extended version of Take Cake to the Children. This building was neither the FNAF 1 location nor the FNAF 2 location. At the end of FNAF 6, we learned the name of this place used to go by was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, a different name than the 1983 location. The title difference might be small, but the additional word place means that established in 1983 Help Wanted coins, and FNAF 1's struggling restaurant poster can still talk about different locations if the struggling poster just omitted the word place. I believe the extra word place was the small retcon Scott was talking about that didn't significantly change the story, but did provide extra clarification about the lore where needed. Freddy was the master of ceremonies in the original Take Cake to the Children, which would be odd if Fredbear was in charge at the time. And Freddy was the avatar character of William Afton's younger son, Michael, not Henry's Fredbear. There is a child drawing in FNAF 1 that shows a small boy with Michael Afton's purple shirt and blue jeans getting a gift from someone adult-sized wearing a Freddy head, while a party of children look on, showing that Michael was probably gifted Freddy for the first time during that party. However, while Freddy's hat was large enough to completely cover his ears in 1972, this same hat seems almost ridiculously small between Freddy's ears by 1983. The Freddy head grew and/or was expanded to accommodate its growing owner, Michael. Both Michael and Charlie were little kids of similar size back in 1972, so 11 years would give both of them time to become the teens we encounter later in the story. The FNAF robots also changed over the years. In 1987, we find Withered Foxy with an Endo 02 spring suit showing through the gaps in his costume, with its telltale metal limb cages designed so a human could fit inside. But in 1992, Foxy's jump scare showed us that he had an Endo 01 stick figure this time, designed to mimic a human skeleton. These still count as the same robots, though, because the remnant their respective children placed to them is still there. These are still the same Horcrux animatronics from 20 years ago, despite being redesigned. So I do think the FNAF 1 clue of the robots being 20 years old in 1992 is still valid, which is why I'm setting 1972 as the year that the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place was open. The animatronics were forged, and the puppet's origin as an aspect of Charlie and Take Cake to the Children took place. So, if Michael wasn't the original Freddy, who was? Remember how Fritz Smith, the minimum wage temp worker who replaced Jeremy/Michael on night 7 of FNAF 2, somehow knew the Afton secret for getting in and out of the lockdown building, possessed verified knowledge of how the animatronics worked, and also wore the same Freddy head that Michael had been wearing all game? I think Fritz Smith was yet another fake name that William Afton used to get rehired by Fazbear Entertainment, just like the Mike Schmidt he used in FNAF 1. Fritz Smith and Mike Schmidt are rare hybrid English-German names showing a similar style of construction. They also both had the same rarefied technician skills needed to adjust the animatronics for a custom night at a time when Freddy's was only supposed to have one technician. And both got fired for the same reasons of tampering with the robots and odor. If that isn't enough, a little digging reveals the name Fritz Smith can translate to the Smith of Frederick, or the maker of Freddy. The reason Fritz could wear the same Freddy head that Michael did was because Fritz was the person who wore that head in the first place. Mike Schmidt took the hot seat in FNAF 1 at a time when both Michael and Phone Guy were out of commission, and adult Henry/Cassette Man had been missing since 1983. William Afton would be the only known major character at large at this point in time, since his spring trapping happened after the FNAF 1 robots were destroyed. That's one reason why I think William Afton must have also been Fritz Smith, which would make William the maker of Freddy, the person who gave Freddy life. Using the same animatronic head would cause the remnant of both Michael and William to blend, resulting in their similar appearance and the confusion of the other family members in telling which was which. Remember how Michael kept following in William's footsteps in Sister Location and as a night guard in the new and improved Freddy's? How Michael became an adult who looked so similar to William that the only way to tell them apart was Michael wearing blue pants? This is because grandfather William was the original Freddy, and took the strange step of gifting this star position to his younger son Michael rather than his eldest son Henry. Traditionally, the eldest son is the one who inherits the family title, which makes the decision unusual. Henry certainly did want to be Freddy. Henry's entire invention of Fredbear, a superior golden animatronic that was, in all other regards, an exact physical copy of Freddy, was an attempt to outdo his younger brother and retake the star position that Henry believed was his by right. In other words, William granting Freddy to Michael greatly upset Henry. Early pictures found at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place in FNAF 6 show that Foxy, Henry's original avatar before he created Fredbear and became his adult form of Cassette Man, was once a regular member of the band and played in harmony with all the other children. The Afton family was once a single band, sharing the incredible secret of robotic immortality and looking forward to a long, bright future working together. However, by the time we meet Foxy years later, he's become a recluse, remaining detached from the rest of the family and preferring to lurk at his own private stage rather than performing with the others. Teen Henry's disinheritance must have been a major factor in creating a rift in the family, a rift that certainly widened after Henry's daughter, Charlie, was attacked outside the pizza place by the Magenta Man in Take Cake to the Children. However, Michael had already been tapped as the next Freddy at the time of the party, and was wearing his new Freddy suit at the time the Magenta Man attacked. This means Henry was already an outcast at the time Take Cake to the Children happened. Why did grandfather William choose Michael to be the next Freddy instead of Henry? What started this rift that would eventually pull the family apart and send Henry out into the world to found his own company, Fazbear Entertainment? What sparked the discord in this harmonious family that would set the stage for all the horrors to come? We have discovered another of FNAF's hidden questions, which requires even deeper searches into FNAF's Metroidvania before we'll find the answer. So, let's form a quest log that contains all the questions we're currently searching for answers for, and let this question hang in our minds as we move forward. After all, you never know when a lead to this mystery might turn up. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place from 1972 wasn't just the original restaurant, it was also the struggling restaurant seen in the FNAF 1 poster. This poster details a location that lasted for years after a single bad incident, which immediately disqualifies locations for the MCI and Save Them happened, since they closed shortly after their respective massacres. It also says only one company held the fort at the time, and was unable to find a second company to associate with them and bail them out financially. This disqualifies Fredbear's Family Diner, because both Henry and William, the CEOs of Fazbear Entertainment and Afton Robotics, performed together on stage. Fredbear's was part of the fear partnership between the two companies, which lasts through the foreseeable future. So, whenever the struggling restaurant appears on the timeline, it had to be years before both the opening of Fredbear's Family Diner and the new and improved Freddy's of 1983. Circus Baby's Pizza World was only open for one night, so it doesn't pass the longevity test either. By process of elimination, the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place from 1972 is the only candy that existed before the Fear partnership, and stayed open for years after its bad incident, Take Cake to the Children. The struggling restaurant poster does specify that the place in question was called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza at the time. However, by FNAF 6, Scott announced that he'd made a small retcon to the timeline that didn't significantly impact the story. After years of puzzling, I now believe this retcon was adding the word place at the end of the name of the original Freddy's. This change distinguishes it from the later restaurants, while also keeping the struggling restaurant poster accurate, since the full name might have simply been abbreviated to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, dropping the word place. Phone Guy made it very clear that his new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza did things differently from the sad restaurant that came before it with a similar name. The robots were permitted to free roam during the day, a practice the original Freddy's prohibited. This restriction turned out to be wise, and was reinstated in the FNAF 1 building after the bite of '87. Our next stop on the timeline is the FNAF 2 building, the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where Phone Guy / Teen Henry was head of security. As before, the coins from Help Wanted said Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, minus the place at the end, was founded in 1983. But there's some confusion here, since FNAF 2 actually happened in November 1987. In that game, we play as Jeremy/Michael, the second guard on duty after William Afton's single week as a night guard, who then went to the day shift, leaving the spot open for us. The newspapers announced at the end of FNAF 2 that the building is closing for good, after only being open for a few short weeks. It takes much longer than a few short weeks to travel from 1983 to 1987, though. Weirder still, both Phone Guy's Night 1 phone call and the two-child FNAF 1 poster mention Freddy's being open in summer, since Phone Guy welcomes us to our new summer job, and the two-child poster says an incident happened at Freddy's on June 26th, in the middle of summer. If FNAF 2 was only open for 2 weeks in 1987, and Night 7 was Saturday the 14th of November, there's no way that a few short weeks is going to bridge the time distance between June and November in a single opening. The only way to make sense of this is a theory model where the FNAF 2 building was opened twice. FNAF 2 starts by saying it's the grand reopening of a vintage pizzeria, which is weird, since Phone Guy warns us in the Night 1 call that the avant-garde modern design of the new building doesn't include any doors to close. Keep in mind that the 1972 pizza place was in a completely different location, so FNAF 2 cannot be a literal reopening of that same building. So a reopening here suggests this particular building has been opened once before already. Let's compare when the new Freddy's was open to when Fredbear's Family Diner was active. In FNAF 3, Phone Guy, in a recording from the new Freddy's FNAF 2 building, says a multiple simultaneous spring lock failure incident happened at the sister location, singular. Note that this is a correction from Chapter 1, when I said this recording was actually made at Fredbear's. My theories evolve and change over time, and I recorded Chapter 1 a while ago. The phrase, the sister location, tells us there was only one such location nearby at the time the tape was made. This sister location must have been Fredbear's Family Diner, the only other known location in the area at the time. The Fredbear and Friends cartoon show first aired in 1983, and since it takes about a year to produce an animated program, that suggests Fredbear was a thing at least as early as 1982. The number code 2093 once appeared on Scott's website, which can transpose down to 1982, marking this as a potential year of interest. So I placed the founding of Fredbear's Family Diner in 1982, 1 year before the opening of Phone Guy's new and improved Freddy's. Fredbear's didn't stay open, though. By the time of FNAF 2's second opening in November 1987, Fredbear's was an old restaurant that had been closed for years. Its owner, Adult Henry/Cassette Man, had disappeared. Phone Guy doubts they'll be able to contact him anymore. The closure and reduced status of Fredbear's shows a lot of time passed between the first and second openings of FNAF 2. There are other indications of the passage of time, also. Just like in the novels, William experiences a massive weight loss between his financially shrewd Santa Claus form in FNAF 4 to the skeletal giraffe zombie we see in Save Them in 1987. Unless William lost 100 pounds in a few short weeks, these are two snapshots of him taken years apart. Both the 2-child and 5-child FNAF 1 posters talk of events that definitely happened at Freddy's. Since only one bad incident happened at the struggling restaurant, the pizza place could not be where the MCI, Save Them, and both bites all happened. The withered animatronics we see in FNAF 2 were definitely the MCI animatronics from the smell, and the cannibalization of their parts to build the toys. However, the robot heads the puppet placed on the MCI kids in Give Gifts Give Life post-MCI were not withered. They seemed perfectly maintained. The blood and mucus leaking from the eyes and mouths of the robots after the kids were stuffed inside them caused the health issues which forced the new Freddy's to close for the first time. That couldn't have happened if Bonnie was withered at the time, since he wouldn't have a face. And if the withered animatronics appeared on stage the same way they look in FNAF 2, children would run out of the building screaming long before blood and mucus residue ever became a problem. So the MCI robots were not withered in 1983, but became withered over the passage of years to 1987. Now, I'd like you to recall from Chapter 2 that the FNAF 1 building doesn't fit as a place where the Foxy Go-Go could have happened. East of FNAF 1 Pirates Cove is the massive central dining hall, covered by 3 cameras, definitely not the off-camera back room where the MCI happened. We already know where FNAF 1's secret room is. It's in the northeast corner, several screens away. So the MCI, as presented in Foxy Go-Go, could not have happened in the FNAF 1 building. On the other hand, Kids Cove on the Save Them map of FNAF 2 is due west from a blank square on the radar that's also just below the Puppets box. Back in 1983, when the MCI happened, Kids Cove would have still been Pirates Cove, and that version of Foxy would look how he did before being converted into Mangle. This potential location for FNAF 2's secret room would also give the puppet easy entry to the room where the MCI happened, and provide a second access point where someone else might have been able to sneak in and out of the room undetected by Foxy to the west. So I definitely think the MCI happened at the new and improved Freddy's in summer of 1983. So, between Foxy becoming Mangle, William becoming Skinny, the animatronics becoming Withered, and Fredbear's becoming an old restaurant by 1987, FNAF 2 was certainly open twice, first in summer 1983 and then in November 1987, for a few short weeks in total. Its first closure was sparked by the aftermath of the MCI, and its second closing was triggered by the investigation to save them, followed by the Bite of 87 on the final day the building was open. This sheds new light on the Night 1 tape of FNAF 2, where Phone Guy welcomes Jeremy/Michael to his new summer job, a tape Phone Guy still played for Michael in November 1987. As one of the few tapes that jealous teen Henry didn't postscript with, "Remember to smile, you are the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza," this recording was certainly directed at Michael personally, denying Freddy's own performer the acknowledgement of being the restaurant's face and William's favored son. However, the Night 2 through 6 tapes were recorded in real time, revealing what was happening behind the scenes every night as the investigation into the Save Them massacre unfolded. This finally ends with Michael being sent to the day shift after Night 6, where he became the Bite of 87 victim during the party the next day, with Fritz Smith taking his shift on Night 7. The Night 1 tape also talks about events that happened just the week before, so it was also a contemporary tape, at least at the time it was first recorded. So, what gives? How can the FNAF 2 Night 1 tape talk about summer like it's the present, a time when the FNAF 2 building was certainly open, yet still be current and relevant for events happening 4 years later in November? My theory is that the Night 1 tape was actually recorded for Michael back in summer 1983 for an earlier shift Michael had at this very same building, and that the events surrounding this first week in 1983 were so similar to what was currently happening in November 1987 that Phone Guy lazily just replayed the same pre-recorded tape again without recording a new one. So, let's test this theory. Is there anything in the FNAF 2 Night 1 tape that would prove that it was recorded in 1987? The puppet is there as the one robot affected by the music box. However, she's been there since 1972 and was present in the aftermath of the MCI in summer 1983, so this would still be a tape from 1983. The call mentions the animatronics, but never specifies the withered or toy animatronics by name, both of which were only present as such in 1987, so no disqualifiers here either. The Night 1 call says the first guard from the week before our shift transferred to day hours after the robots started acting hostile, which certainly works with the aftermath of the Save Them massacre in 1987. However, this also works with the aftermath of the MCI in summer 1983, another massacre that ended up with robots being possessed and turning vengeful. So, this still doesn't prove the Night 1 call must be from November. Could it be that the Night 1 tape perfectly describes the events happening in two different places in time, 4 years apart? Can we use this time link to learn about what happened in 1983 by studying the events in 1987, since this one tape works in both places? If Jeremy actually had an earlier shift in summer 1983, this seeming inconsistency in the Night 1 call, mentioning a summer job, might not be a mistake, but a deliberate vehicle for delivering evidence in a super compact form. Here's a funny story about me on inconsistencies, quote-unquote. I once thought I was so smart for discovering an error in the Harry Potter books, when they said that rat familiars only lived to the age of 3, when we already knew that Ron's pet rat Scabbers was 12. I felt so proud of myself for discovering an error J.K. Rowling herself made in the books that somehow not even her dim-witted editors caught. Only to stare in slack-jawed disbelief as Scabbers, quote-unquote, turned out to be Peter Pettigrew. I stared at that page dumbstruck for 3 seconds, until a giant cartoon mallet suddenly caved in my forehead. Of course Scabbers wasn't a normal rat, he was 12 years old! That wasn't a mistake, it was a clue! A clue I'd been too arrogant to see, until it was too late. I've been very suspicious of inconsistencies, quote-unquote, ever since, and vowed from that day onward that I would never underestimate a mystery author again. So, whenever some strange detail pops up, like someone talking about a summer job in November, I always ask what it might tell us if it just happened to be a clue. At worst, it'll just be another dead end, and we can try something else. But if it is important, and we give this idea its day in court, we just might learn something new. So I make a point in testing every idea I come across, no matter how crazy they might seem at first. So, can we prove that the events in 1983 did not mirror the Night 1 call? Each guard at Freddy's has a number, and William, Michael, and Fritz were the 3 guards in the station in 1987. If other guards worked at this building in 1983, the total number should be higher than the 3 we know. But Fritz, the last guard, had number 3 on his pink slip, meaning no records of other guards existed at the time. Well, what if Freddy's just reset the number for the second opening? Can we prove that at least one of the guards who worked in 1983 returned again in 87? Yes, because William Afton was Guard 01 in 1987 and personally witnessed the Save Them massacre. But William is also accused of, and, at least in the game universe, convicted of causing the 5 missing children incident in 1983. That's why technician William had to hack the robot's facial recognition systems in 1987, because after being convicted in 1983, his face was now in the criminal database the second time around. This means that William, at least, did act as a guard both times. And, notably, both the MCI and Save Them happened on William's week, resulting in the same angry robots and identical transfers to the day shift. Recall the earlier detail where Phone Guy warned Michael about the strange new modern architecture of the building that lacked doors. But in 1987, this was supposed to be the reopening of a vintage place, a relic from the past. An old place whose floor design would already be well known. As we covered last chapter, all the employees in FNAF 2 must have been Aftons to both know the secret passages in and out of the house kitchen, and also keep this suspicious secret safe during a multiple child murder investigation. So there's no way Michael would not know the building layout. Unless this tape was indeed recorded for Michael in 1983, when he would be seeing this building for the first time. I have to wonder why Phone Guy thought Michael needed to be warned about the lack of doors, as if they were something Michael would expect to see. This detail caused some confusion when FNAF 2 launched, where people thought it meant FNAF 2 was a sequel rather than a prequel, as if the FNAF 1 building had appeared at an earlier point in time. Could Michael have already worked at a location that had closable doors, even before FNAF 2? We do have evidence that Michael spent many nights at Fredbear's Family Diner, despite hating the place. FNAF 4 shows the earlier memories the bite victim / Michael had of being left at Fredbear's, where adult Henry / Cassette Man / the man in the Fredbear suit wouldn't let him leave. It makes sense for Freddy to hate working at a place dedicated to the worship of his older brother's avatar, especially since Fredbear was actually a gold-colored ripoff of Michael's own character. Since Fredbear's was the only sister location open alongside the new Freddy's, opening the year before in 1982, if Michael worked anywhere else before his 1983 shift at the FNAF 2 building, it must have been at Fredbear's. If Fredbear's was the place with doors that Michael worked at before his summer 1983 shift at the new Freddy's, the FNAF 2 Night 1 tape would make perfect sense if it was a replayed recording from 1983. Especially if Fredbear's had doors. Can we prove that Fredbear's Family Diner had office security doors just like the FNAF 1 building? I think we can, because just like the new Freddy's, the FNAF 1 building has also been open more than once. FNAF VR / Help Wanted's hub room is set in the massive central dining hall of the FNAF 1 building, and reveals a curious detail for the first time. There are exit signs above both halls that lead to the guard office. There is no exit in FNAF 1's office though, but there used to be. If you turn around and clip through the heavy lockers on the back wall, you'll discover a secret. There's a hall back there that leads to a T intersection, and presumably a way out. When the FNAF 1 building was first made, this escape route was in place to save the lives of security guards as a last line of defense. However, in 1992, this building seems to have been opened again under new management with different priorities. Blocking the safety exit as well as artificially limiting the power are measures aimed at killing night guards and harvesting their souls instead of keeping them alive. The FNAF 1 building had already been opened once before 1992. When Glitchtrap finally attacks and successfully absorbs our soul, we get a momentary glimpse at what it used to look like. Out of Glitchtrap's eyes, we see the same central dining hall with the same exits and equipment. However, two things are different. Spring Bonnie is now the one on stage instead of Freddy, and the party tables are gone, leaving only an empty space like a dance floor. Do you recognize this place? We saw it as the Stage of 1 minigame in FNAF 3, a flashback of Fredbear's Family Diner. It even has the same 3 clouds at the back of the stage, just like the FNAF 1 location has. FNAF 1 was the second opening of Fredbear's Family Diner under new management, with new, darker priorities. It had the same guard office with the same security doors, the very doors Michael Afton was used to using when he worked as a night guard at Fredbear's back in 1982. This is why Phone Guy had to warn Michael about the lack of those familiar doors when he started his first week at the new, modern FNAF 2 building in summer 1983. People who thought the FNAF 1 building occurred before FNAF 2 scored a partial hit, because the FNAF 1 building really did open first. The idea that the FNAF 2 Night 1 tape was replayed from summer 1983 while the others were made in 1987 now stacks with several lore elements with no conflicts. Phone Guy's odd habit of pre-recording tapes now seems to have been put in place in advance to help set up this puzzle for FNAF 2. The old restaurant phone guy mentions on night 1 is the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza place from 1972, since Fredbear's was the open sister location at the time. This makes the old place mentioned on night 6 Fredbear's Family Diner, since it's 1987 FNAF 2 and Fredbear's has now been closed for years. It's amazing what you can find by giving odd ideas a try. Mystery writers love improbabilities, simply because few people think to look for them. I call this puzzle the Summer Paradox, the subject of the video I made before this one. Having one tape tell the story of 2 places in time is a brilliant trick for packing more information into fewer words that fits in well with FNAF's minimalist style. This is a technique I call time linking, where 2 events are connected in such a way that they're designed to be compared to each other, letting us learn more about one event indirectly by studying the other. For example, Charlie's trilogy of novels is time-linked to the story of the games, because it shows us a mirror universe based off of the game's story. The stories of the games and novels are very different, which is something Scott warned us about. The pieces of one don't fit neatly into the puzzle of the other. However, when we see particular details in the novels, like William being acquitted of the MCI despite being guilty, they point out events we might want to study carefully in the story of the games. Could it be that William was convicted of the MCI in the games despite being innocent? If the mirror universe holds in this case, it's an idea we should certainly look for and test for plausibility. The Mirror Universe novels also warn us that we should be looking for a detailed mystery while exploring the games, because only a complex game story could cast such a detailed reflection in the tale of the novels. Time linking is a powerful, advanced mystery crafting technique for delivering evidence in a compact yet heavily encrypted way. I want to stress the importance of the time linking technique here because we're going to see it several more times while we're searching FNAF. Closing a restaurant marked by tragedy, only to reopen it again later under a rebranded name and hoping the public couldn't tell the difference, might seem risky. However, it was a common practice at Fazbear Entertainment, because FNAF 1 is not where the story of Fredbear's Family Diner ended. Warp ahead 30 years after Freddy's closed its doors, and we're at Fazbear's Fright, the FNAF 3 building. At first, the floor plan seems completely new. It even looks like Anim Dude when you turn it upside down, but on a closer look, familiar details start to surface. FNAF 3's Camera 2 looks remarkably like Camera 2A from FNAF 1. A long hall seen at a familiar angle, the same checkerboard trimming. Both have a doorway halfway up the left side. And standing at the end of the hall in both cameras is a familiar sight, Bonnie. The very same Bonnie from FNAF 1, although he is dismantled now. The FNAF 3 cutscene showed William getting spring-trapped in the secret room at the northeast corner of the FNAF 1 building. And the northeast corner of Fazbear's Fright is where Springtrap begins each night in FNAF 3 after he leaves his secret lair. The FNAF 3 building is looking more like the FNAF 1 building by the moment. A third opening of Fredbear's Family Diner. And yet, there are still clues we're missing a chapter in this building's history. There was no arcade in FNAF 1, but 3 video game cabinets were sealed in the secret room with Springtrap. When FNAF 3 opens, we find 3 old Fazbear-themed arcade cabinets out on the arcade floor. They must be relics from the FNAF 1 era. But they're already out on the floor on night 1, before Phone Dude has even unsealed the secret room. Someone must have accessed this room before work on Fazbear's Fright even began. Springtrap's costume has also been changed from the bare front when William put it on to the single button seen in the Stage 01 minigame. So whoever opened the secret room between FNAF 1 and 3 also gave Springtrap a makeover. And this new, refurbished Spring Bonnie costume had already become withered over the passage of years by the opening of FNAF 3. Whoever opened the secret room before also transformed the entire floor layout of the building. The FNAF 3 office was a shambles when Faux Dude and our protagonist discovered it, but in the survival logbook, Freddy and Foxy talk in a clean version of this office, so the Anim Dude floor plan was used in an actual restaurant at some point. An unknown 4th opening of Fredbear's, located between FNAF 1 and FNAF 3. What could this place have been? It's been 30 years since the last Freddy's closed its doors, but could the building have opened again under a non-Freddy's name during that time? What potential restaurant names are still out there? Perhaps a name we've already heard about was the mysterious 3rd opening of Fredbear's. Henry must have made some restaurant of his own when he left the family to found Fazbear Entertainment. Chipper bragged in FNAF World that he'd be gnawing on our bones, then had a Fiesta buffet in FNAF 6, which the Rockstar animatronics seemed to be from, going by Rockstar Chica's Maracas. But the name that interests me the most was hinted at Chica's party in FNAF 3 and the website code teasers for sister location, Chica's Party World. On night 4 of Sister Location, a sly voice who loves calling us dummy tells us the spring suit we're currently trapped in belonged to her old pizzeria. While context suggests Baby is the one talking, and the voice does sound like hers, its personality is all wrong. Dummy voice is sly and devious, while Baby sounds sensitive and compassionate. The two voices sound as similar, yet opposite, as Vaudeville villain Scraptrap compared to English Gentleman William at the start of the game. It might be William's voice both times, but they're two different versions of William with different personalities. Baby sounds painfully honest, while Dummy voice brags about her ability to deceive people by pretending to be one way when she's really the other. So we should be cautious when making assumptions about who we're talking to. A close examination of the unique faceplate contours under her mask matches the Night 4 springsuit to Funtime Chica, an old robot from the Rare Finds auction made alongside the other Funtimes. Dummy voice might be referring to Circus Babies as her old restaurant, but there are some details that don't stack with this. Dummy voice says she doesn't think Funtime Chica was ever used the way it was meant to be used, much like how Classic Chica was supposed to be Charlie's character but never got to be used, at least not by her. Since the spring locks inside Funtime Chica were designed to fail if they detected any breathing or heartbeat inside, the suit was designed to kill its wearer and absorb their soul. So, until Michael got trapped inside her, Funtime Chica had no remnant in her and wasn't possessed. But how could Dummy Voice be uncertain if Funtime Chica had ever been used before? The Funtimes came from Circus Baby's Pizza World. Circus Baby's Pizza World was only open for one day, and on that day, the only casualty was Elizabeth getting devoured by Baby. So if Circus Baby's doomed opening was the only time Funtime Chica ever got deployed in a real restaurant, there should be no doubt if she was used or not. Whoever controlled the Sister Location facility never sent Funtime Chica to the surface as part of Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals, soul harvesting and scooping operation. So Funtime Chica was never exploited and tortured the way Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Baby, and Ballora were. That would make her the unused fifth animatronic in the Sister Location teaser lineup. A fully functional Funtime that Seabear's manager held in reserve for some reason. Whoever ran the Sister Location facility seemed to have a special fondness for Chica. Since she was never used at Circus Baby's Pizza World or Seabear's Entertainment and Rental, the only way Funtime Chica might have seen action before Sister Location was if she was deployed in a third operation. But we know the animatronic lineups for every opening, except the one between FNAF 1 and 3. So if Funtime Chica was featured anywhere, it would be at the third opening of Fredbear's. Funtime Chica was also one of the most expensive robots in FNAF 6/Pizzeria Simulator, worth a superstar's ransom. If she'd only been a minor supporting character active for a single day at Doomed Babies, you'd think she would be one of the cheapest robots instead. At some point, Funtime Chica was the star of her own restaurant, which could not have been Circus Babies, but could easily have been Chica's Party World. So I've marked the transitional opening between FNAF 1 and Fazbear's Fright as Chica's Party World, the place Dummy Voice owned, and, for some reason, decided to name after Charlie's intended avatar, Chica, instead of Michael's Freddy or Henry's Fredbear. There's another reason why I don't think Dummy Voice the Pretender was actually Elizabeth/Baby, and it comes from the Biddy Babs. Baby's voice told Michael, and presumably anyone else listening, to hide under the desk just like the person before him did, and the Biddy Babs would soon lose interest and leave. But the Biddy Babs only left when they realized that she, a female character they did not name, was watching them. A character they seemed to fear. But if they were afraid of Baby, you'd think the sound of Baby's voice right behind Michael would have been enough to protect Michael and send them running. Instead, it took 2 rounds of trying to pull away the barrier before the Biddy Babs noticed that she was watching and left. So I don't think the she in question is Baby. There's another strange detail about Sister Location's floor plan that doesn't add up if Elizabeth/Baby was the one in control. The private office. Baby had her own lair, rigged up to her own shock button, just like Ballora and Funtime Foxy had. Do you know what happens to a robot when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything toad-like. Getting repeatedly and randomly fried at the cruel whim of an overseer is not something anyone would willingly endure. But Baby had to endure it, because she wasn't the one in control. After shocking Baby's area 3 times on night 1, we hear the scooper working overtime as we're leaving the facility through the vent. It's not scooping Ballora, Funtime Foxy, Funtime Freddy, or Yendo on night 1, because we encounter all of them later in the story. But when we finally see Baby for the first time on night 5, she's already been hollowed out inside, with no indication of when this actually happened. Baby could have been out of commission since night 1, so he might not have ever been talking to the real Baby for the entire game. Someone else owned and operated the private office and sister location, and whoever they were holding all the other robots, including Baby, prisoner despite all their attempts to escape over the years. And I believe this Overlord character was dummy voiced on Night 4, who claimed that Funtime Chica, who we've now established was the star of Chica's Party World, came from her old pizzeria, the transitional opening of Fredbear's building between FNAF 1 and 3. Traditionally, locations are named after their stars. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place had William and Michael's Freddy as its main character. Fredbear's Family Diner used adult Henry's avatar Fredbear as its mascot. And presumably, El Chip's Fiesta Buffet glorifies Chipper. But Chica was supposed to be Charlie's avatar. So why would someone other than Charlie name a restaurant they personally controlled after Chica? That's a question for our quest log. So if Baby didn't own the private office, who did? Who else is left other than the she who scared off the Biddy Babs, and had the power to watch them from a distance, something all those monitors seem perfectly designed for? Whoever Dummy Voice is, she had the power to order Funtime Foxy to ambush us, then lock us into Funtime Chica, and she'd be the one watching the other robots and shocking them back into compliance when a technician wasn't around, so the Biddy Babs aren't the only ones afraid of Dummy Voice. We learn more about Dummy Voice studying the private office. They have a plushie of Fredbear on their desk, holding a 16-button remote control. Many theorists have linked this 16-button array to the town map in FNAF 4, which also has a 4x4 construction. A town constantly monitored by psychic friend Fredbear, an animated plushie. Typing the code 1983 into the keypad also brings up an Easter egg where 3 locations from FNAF 4 appear on the monitors, just as replicas of 3 rooms from FNAF 4 appear on Funtime Freddy's electrical map. So Dummy Voice also seems to have control over FNAF 4, and has some sort of kinship with Fredbear. Sister Location does have a version of Fredbear. In a rare event, Yendo sometimes replaces Funtime Foxy in Funtime Auditorium. Just as Fredbear is a clone of Freddy, Yendo is a perfect copy of Funtime Freddy without their shell, except Yendo has a set of golden eyes instead of Freddy's blue ones. Fredbear Gold. And it's even hinted that Yendo is someone we've seen before. In Sister Location's Custom Night, Yendo plays the role of FNAF 1 Yellow Bear by suddenly appearing in her office and requiring us to quickly flip up the monitor to send them away. The private room boss fight also has a layout very similar to FNAF 1, while directly connecting to the bedroom defense area from FNAF 4 on Funtime Freddy's electrical map, a layout also based on FNAF 1. Every Afton family member has a robot that acts as their avatar. While we know Baby belongs to Elizabeth, or perhaps the other way around, we don't have a robot for Dummy Voice yet. However, the only possessed robot in Sister Location that isn't spoken for is Yendo. And it just so happens that whenever FNAF 1 Yellow Bear attacks, she makes the sound of a girl giggling. I do think that Michael Brooks and a young version of Michael Afton both became Golden Freddy in their respective universes after being bitten by Fredbear. But both of them are boys, and neither could make the sound Yellow Bear does when she appears in FNAF 1. This girlish giggle, which is labeled as such in the sound files, also becomes all of Freddy's deep-voiced laughs in the first game when it's slowed down. In the future, Dummy Voice was the overseer of the Sister Location complex who controlled Yendo, a version of Fredbear. But adult Henry, the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment who used Fredbear as his avatar, went missing back in 1983. New management was in place when Fredbear's reopened into the FNAF 1 building. New management who decided to block the emergency exit so night guards would die more frequently. Could Dummy Voice have been in control of Freddy's in 1992, as well as Sister Location and Chica's Party World in the future? Could Dummy Voice have been the real one in charge ever since 1983? We can't blame William for the Sister Location facility. He was imprisoned in Springtrap for 30 years, and the first thing he did once getting free was try to save the other family members from Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, enlisting his younger son Michael to help, to stop the systematic gut-ripping torture the rest of the family had suffered for decades, something the CEO of the company could have done with a stroke of a pen, without any need to crawl through vents or risk death. We've seen Dummy Voice outside of Sister Location, too. She was in the conversation between FNAF World's webpage and ScottGames.com. She seemed to speak for FNAF World, as if it was under her control, a game where, oddly enough, Fredbear is the one telling us what to do. And if we do everything they tell us to, we get a troll ending, mocking our lack of progress. It doesn't seem like Dummy Voice is our friend, any more than Fredbear is. Let's take a quick index of what the characters we know about were doing at the time of FNAF 1. Adult Henry, aka Cassette Man / the Man in the Fredbear suit, had been missing in action ever since Fredbear's close in 1983. Adult Henry would only reappear on the timeline far in the future, perhaps as the anonymous caller who claimed to have designed the FNAF 3 building, who also gave an anonymous tip about where to find the secret room to Phone Dude. Adult Henry wasn't around in 1992. Michael Afton was the Bite of 87 victim. He'd been clinging to life ever since and was still alive, and still incapacitated, in 1992, according to the FNAF 1 Night 1 phone call. FNAF 4 suggests Michael / Freddy was taken to his older brother's room in the Afton house and hooked up to an IV. The Aftons preferred to treat their own wounded instead of sending them to a hospital, because trained medical staff would be able to tell they were androids instead of humans. This is why Aunt Jen warned Novel Charlie never to go to a hospital and told her to use cheap junkster bandages to treat even grave wounds. The police found fake blood at the scene where William got springtrapped in the novels, but it wasn't from William, it was synthetic blood from Charlie. And Michael was the same sort of Afton android child, so Michael Afton wasn't conscious in 1992. William Afton was still large, though. William / Mike Smith / Fritz Smith survived FNAF 2 and would stay free until his springtrapping at the FNAF 1 building. The FNAF 1 animatronics were destroyed in the cutscenes leading up to it, so this must have happened after FNAF 1. There is a creepy image in the child pictures that looks like future Springtrap staring right at the camera, but as an eye with only one ring, not the two rings we see Springtrap have in FNAF 3. Spring Bonnie is waiting there, menacingly, but hasn't caught William yet. And William's in the hot seat in FNAF 1, dodging killer robots and interrupting Fazbear Entertainment's plan to harvest a night guard every 90 days, at least for as long as William himself could survive. What motivated William to come here, to a place clearly designed as a death trap, and put his own life at risk? So this series of unfortunate, nameless, minimum wage hires who would never have survived by themselves here would still live? Did William have a death wish? Did William have a guilty conscience? Did he keep trying to tinker with robots, the act that eventually got him fired in both custom nights, in the hopes of fixing something that was wrong with them? Again, William was a CEO of Afton Robotics, who was currently infiltrating Fazbear Entertainment under a fake name. William was not the new management of Freddy's that we're looking for. William was certainly around, but William wasn't the one causing the horror. The last major character we know about was Phone Guy. After the new and improved Freddy's closed for the second time in November 1987, Phone Guy said he would be the next night guard, and he made good on his promise to take over the night guard position himself once the company reorganized into a smaller place and reopened. Phone Guy had been the night guard on duty at FNAF 1 before Mike Schmidt / William took the hot seat after Phone Guy's own incident. But in the FNAF 1 Night 4 call, Phone Guy leaves a final tape message as all the animatronics surrounded his office, banging on the door and finally getting entry. He's glad he recorded this message when he did, his final message from the past. And then, the unique sound of FNAF 1 Yellow Bear's roar radiates from the tape, just before the phone actually hangs up, suggesting that Phone Guy was devoured by Yellow Bear before FNAF 1 even began. Perhaps a long time before. So, Phone Guy wasn't around. The only main character we know of who's still alive and free at the time of FNAF 1 is William Afton. Adult Henry, Michael, and Teen Henry / Phone Guy have all been taken out of the picture. But there's a mystery here. If William is alone in this building, then who's the one who's been recording the creepy messages for him after Phone Guy died? Do you remember how Demi Voice loved to pretend? She spent all of Sister Location pretending to be Baby, and mimic Baby with uncanny effectiveness. As we covered in the last chapter, some characters can mimic the voices of other family members with supernatural precision. The children of Afton family members share a remnant with their parents and thus seem to have the power to mimic their voices. That's why Michael Afton's voice sounded exactly like William's in the last cutscene of Sister Location, and that's how older brother Henry fooled all the escaped robotic family members in Pizzeria Simulator into thinking that he was William, and lured them in with false promises. Both Michael and Henry were the sons of William Afton, and as his children, they could both mimic his voice. Now, think very carefully about Phone Guy's recordings in FNAF 1. The Night 4 tape was definitely recorded by Phone Guy himself, but what about the others? Phone Guy, the younger team form of Henry, loved Foxy. Foxy was literally a version of him, a robot who contained some of his own remnant. The real Phone Guy would always prioritize Foxy over all the other robots. That's why Foxy got his personal stage of Fredbears to begin with, a unique, elite place off to the side, while adult Henry, his upgraded version made with most of his remnant, performed on the main stage as Fredbear, an older, more mature version of him with a new avatar of his own. But the Phone Guy we meet in FNAF 1 is a very different person. Foxy is no longer being treated like a special snowflake. Instead, his special stage has now been converted into a prison, locking him away from the rest of the world behind a fake out-of-order sign, even though Foxy can still run down the West Hall like an Olympic champion. And while the company has the money to maintain all the other robots in pristine condition and can replace the blood-soaked carpets and wallpaper every 90 days like a well-oiled murderous machine, Foxy has been left to rot in his prison, and his costume is now a withered mess. The age of Foxy's rotting costume hints that this new management priority has been in place for some time, suggesting that the real phone guy died a long time ago. And yet, we keep getting phone calls from someone who sounds just like him. We even get a phone call in FNAF 3 that announces the sealing of the secret rooms, something that happened after William was springtrapped, long after Phone Guy was dead. Teen Henry did not record that message. And on night 5 of FNAF 1, the game is up. The creature who's been recording messages for us in perfect mimicry of Phone Guy's voice finally drops the act, and torments us with a horrifyingly distorted passage from Chapter 8 of The Autobiography of a Yogi, in a warped voice that no human could naturally replicate. It's clear now that the creature who has been talking to us has been trying to personally torment William Afton, and they've personally sent William the audio recording of a version of his eldest son being devoured as part of this campaign of torture. If William Afton is the evil force behind everything in FNAF, then who killed Phone Guy? And sent this recording to William as a way to torment him? Someone else is in here too. There must be at least one more central character in this story, pulling the strings from the shadows. The entity who killed Phone Guy and could mimic his voice perfectly. And, judging from the Night 4 recording, also shares a link to Yellow Bear, the character who scored the death blow on Teen Henry. Yellow Bear, who always announces themselves with the sound of a girl giggling. So now we have a set of criteria to use for hunting down the real identity of Dummy Voice. She's associated with Fredbear and seems to be a ghost who possesses that robot. But her favorite character is Chica, since she named Chica's party world after Charlie's intended avatar. She has the power to perfectly mimic Phone Guy's voice like an Afton child could mimic their parents, but her natural voice is that of a young girl. So, which character in the Afton family tree would fit all of these benchmarks? Well, let's put this one in our quest log for now. We've covered much of the future timeline, but there's still more to find in the past. Take Cake to the Children is the first incident we get to see in FNAF 1 through 4, an event at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place from 1972, and a place we revisit in FNAF 6's Pizzeria Simulator, as adult Henry returns to end everything at the place where it all began. Also, while Take Cake involves Charlie being excluded from a party, Happiest Day consists of building a party for a lonely child, adding a sort of symmetry between the two events. So we should learn as much about Take Cake to the Children as possible. The security puppet minigame extends the original scene. The puppet is programmed not to let the one child with the green bracelet, Henry's daughter Charlie, leave the birthday party. And the puppet floats out of the building to try and find Charlie after the other party children lock her outside, only to find her lifeless body beside a pair of tire tracks. Managing to reach her and absorb her remaining remnant just before the rain shorts the puppet out completely. Midnight Motorist seems to follow the Magenta Man / Take Cake killer as he flees this very scene. His magenta aura car hurls down the highway as he tries to dodge all the cars with the purple auras that are in his way. The same rain from Security Puppet is still beating down, and the minigame is called Later That Night in the game files, showing that Midnight Motorist is definitely happening after some sort of important event. It's very heavily suggested that Midnight Motorist happens right after Security Puppet, but when we look closely at Midnight Motorist, details start to seem off. First, the Magenta Man doesn't get out of the car. Instead, it's a small yellow man with a thick, square build and a straight back who arrives at Junior's, the secret grave, and the house. And when they approach the house, they turn to a large orange man with a thin, round build and a bent back. The same man who suddenly somehow seems like the complete opposite of what he once was. Next, as our magenta glowing car hurls down the road, all the purple glowing vehicles on the left side of the road are driving in the same direction as we are, while the cars on the right side of the highway are driving towards us. This makes getting to the side road at the bottom of the screen much more dangerous. And it's also the opposite direction that cars drive in the United States. In the US, we always drive on the right side of the road, meaning that this scene can't be happening in the US, but in some other English-speaking country where people drive on the left. England is the most likely candidate. Freddy's was an American company, so whoever established it would have been in the US long beforehand. So we're looking for an old guy with an English accent who connects Midnight Motorist and Take Cake to the Children. Immediately, grandfather William Afton, the CEO of Afton Robotics, comes to mind. William/Mike Schmidt also had Old Sport written on his FNAF 1 check, a very English saying. And William was the original owner of the English accent used in the sister location interview, which was later mimicked by both of his sons. While we haven't heard Michael's natural voice yet, older brother Henry's natural voice in the FNAF 6 tapes definitely has an American accent. And if the older brother grew up in the States, the younger brother did also. So the character who connects the scenes of Midnight Motorist from England in the past to Take Cake to the Children in the United States in 1972 must be Englishman grandfather William Afton. Remember how the first phone call of FNAF 2 linked the events of two places in time? Midnight Motorist is time-linked to Take Cake to the Children in the same way. The Magenta Man attacks Charlie, and a car with a magenta aura flees from the scene. The rain, the tire skid marks beside Charlie, the caption later that night. It doesn't matter that Midnight Motorist is happening on the other side of the ocean years before. The events there are linked to the actions here, and by studying one, we can learn more about the other. Just like the Magenta Man, the yellow/orange guy is an outsider to a restaurant. When we drive up to Junior's, a green guy tells us, "Come on, you know you can't be here. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be." Green guy knows us, and there's some personal reason we can't come in. The site of Take Cake to the Children was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, named after William's younger son Michael. So 1972's Pizza Place was also a Junior's of a sort. And the strange opposite nature of the yellow/orange man also stacks with the equally bizarre opposite nature of both of the FNAF 2 sprites commonly attributed to William Afton. The classic purple guy from Save Them, who does resemble Dave from the Silver Eyes, and the Magenta Man, the attacker in Take Cake to the Children, who is also the spectator who watches Foxy enter the missing children incident room from a distance, right before the person wearing the cartoon mascot Foxy suit finds the 5 dead kids and takes the fall for the MCI. William's purple guy and the infamous pink guy/magenta man are the complete opposite of each other in every possible way. Dark eyes instead of bright, thick versus thin, no neck versus giraffe neck, street posture versus bent, a square frame versus a round one. Both the yellow/orange man and the purple/pink guy seem related to each other while being opposite at the same time, like each one was the Jekyll or Hyde of the other. FNAF tells its story in a minimalist style, and the slight shade difference between two sprites can tell us a lot. Older brother Foxy's bright red fox head was the same shade as the one placed on Foxy's MCI kid, while the dark red one who jump-scared CC in the FNAF 4 house was the same shade as the Foxy who found the 5 dead kids in Foxy Go-Go. The first became Withered Foxy, while the second was rebuilt into Mangle. Small details can have large meanings in FNAF. So when I see a pattern where two sprites are painstakingly designed to be the perfect opposite of each other, my Scabbers the Rat PTSD starts flaring up. Especially when this difference is doubled down again in FNAF 6, where the yellow/orange guy has the same sort of similar differences the Magenta Man has with the purple guy. The artist wouldn't have gone to such lengths to create this difference and double down on its importance unless they were trying to tell us something. Well, what could the message be? Midnight Motorist makes it clear that the Yellow Man and Orange Man are physically the same people, but perhaps the difference is mental and might indicate a split personality? Yellow Man seems to turn a bit into a monster when he gets home, yelling at the boy of the house to unlock his door and let him in. And then we find the boy has actually broken his window and run off, rather than let the Orange Man into the room. A situation that's even more alarming because Orange Man isn't surprised by this at all, theorizing that the boy ran off to that place again. Perhaps to Junior's, that place Yellow/Orange Man isn't allowed inside for some reason? That's a lot of broken windows. Orange Man is looking less like a Jekyll and more like a Hyde by the moment. Well, Orange Man is messed up, and Magenta Man is messed up too. If the Magenta Man is William Afton, everything seems to be in order. Midnight Motorist makes a point in showing us that the Yellow and Orange Man are physically the same people, despite appearing opposite in every way. Wouldn't that confirm that William is the Magenta Man? The pink guy does not exist. Case closed. Except, there are a few lore items that don't stack well with this model. Most serial killers have a modus operandi, a particular style of killing dictated by their personal obsessions, and William Afton's style is well known. He lures people into the secret off-camera back room in each location and kills them quietly. William abducted Charlie in the back room of Fredbear's in the novels, and stands accused of doing the same thing in the MCI and the games. There's also an image from FNAF 4 of William without a costume, fitting a shorter teenager into Spring Bonnie. No kid was stuffed into Spring Bonnie during the MCI, but the MCI wasn't the only kill event on the timeline. There's still the two-child poster, which specified a person without a suit was caught on camera, which does match the FNAF 4 scene. And then there's the seeming murder of the kid who becomes Freddy at the end of Help Wanted. After Glitch Trap, now a man in a golden rabbit costume, lures us to a place we can be safely and quietly stuffed. So while many aspects are mirrored between universes, William's personal sneaky style of luring and stuffing people quietly and out of sight holds across both of them. But Take Cake to the Children wasn't a typical William murder. In fact, it was the opposite. Instead of luring someone, the Magenta Man attacked Charlie right where she was, and he did it in public view just outside the restaurant where the murder would certainly be discovered. There was nothing quiet or sneaky about Take Cake to the Children. This is why, even though the murder didn't actually happen inside Freddy's pizza place, it was close enough that the fallout from the event still stained Pizza Place's reputation. This put the 1972 restaurant into a downward spiral to become the struggling restaurant, and eventually got to the edge of bankruptcy after years of struggling to stay open. Not only was Take Cake to the Children not William's usual style, it was the perfect opposite of it. Just as the Magenta Man is the perfect inverse of William's Save Them Purple Guy sprite. So the exact deliberate design of the pink guy is definitely essential and relevant to the story. Weirder still, William was accused of, and in the game universe, convicted of causing the MCI. And the person accused was the one caught on camera wearing a cartoon mascot suit, according to the FNAF 1 poster. Which would be the person in Foxy in the Foxy Go 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 minigame. Foxy was certainly the animatronic who actually lured in the kids. They are there specifically to see him. And the reason Foxy could enter this room was that someone was inside him, guiding his steps and allowing him access to the secret room where Foxy could not normally go on his own. But as Foxy's performer went in for the third final surprise, which turned out to be a surprise for him as well as the kids, the pink guy stood in the far corner of Pirate's Cove watching Foxy's performer enter. If the pink guy was William, shouldn't that have been him going to the room instead? The Magenta Man does seem to enjoy watching Foxy, but he isn't dressed up in the suit himself or standing anywhere near the door to the secret room. So if the pink guy is William, how could William be in two places at once? And now for the big one. We've time-linked Midnight Motorist to Take Cake to the Children, and established that the common link between this scene from Juniors in England in the past and 1972's Freddy's Pizza Place in the US was William Afton. Which means William Afton must have been the one to travel from England to the United States. So let me ask you a few simple questions. Which character in Midnight Motorist had a house and family already established in England? And which character was the one who wanted to leave that house? Who in Midnight Motorist was most likely to travel to the US? The kid. The kid is the one who ran away from home in England, while the Yellow-Orange Man owned the house there. The Yellow-Orange Man had no reason to leave England. It doesn't even seem to like the kid he's the parent and/or guardian of. Meanwhile, the boy would rather tear his own flesh with the jagged pieces of broken window glass than spend one more night in that horrible house. The Orange Man was an abusive guardian, which is why the kid ran away again and again and again, until finally, one day, the kid never came back, and got as far away from the Yellow-Orange Man as he could by traveling to the other side of the ocean. William Afton was the kid the Yellow-Orange Man was abusing. And when William came to the US, he brought something of value with him, too. If you look closely at the footprints leaving the broken window, the huge footprint of an animatronic can be seen next to them. Did William invent the very first Horcrux animatronic? We may never know, but he was undoubtedly the one who brought their knowledge to the United States. Another immigrant fleeing oppression, who came to America for its freedom of expression. And here, he made the first restaurant, becoming the original Freddy, and naming the pizza place after his personal character at the time. If William wasn't the Yellow-Orange Man, he wouldn't have been the Magenta Man either. Tragedy can leave scars that take a long time to heal, and sometimes victims can be twisted by the experience. But those who have known pain, and retain their sanity after the experience, rarely intend to inflict it on others, because they've been there and understand what it's like. William Afton was visited by such pain early in his life. It's wrong to dismiss William as the messed-up monster of the week. He's a far more complex character than most people give him credit for. A vital element in any murder mystery is the motive. Why did the killer attack and choose this victim in particular? What did they plan to gain by doing this? Saying the killer is simply insane requires making an assumption without evidence. Killers have modus operandi because there's usually a method to their madness. One that at least makes sense to them, if not to anyone else. But take cake to the children wasn't just a crime, it was a stupid crime. Why would anyone kill a victim out in the open, then use the sound of their own peeling out tires to make sure anyone nearby would realize something bad had just happened? Freddy's is a secret, off-camera room dedicated to creating a safe, pleasant, quiet environment where someone could easily be abducted and all evidence of the crime could be erased. So why would someone with access to this safe room choose to attack someone outside on the pavement instead? It's almost like they wanted the crime to be discovered, and the reputation of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place to be destroyed. The person who owned and operated Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place would have absolutely no reason to kill someone outside. Even if they wanted to kill Charlie, this wouldn't be the way to do it. It would have been far easier and cleaner to use the secret room. All they had to do was open the door and let Charlie inside, and everything would have been quick and neat. And Charlie was expected to show up that day. Whoever ran Pizza Place had the security puppet all set up to ensure that Charlie, the one child with a green armband, didn't leave the party. Whoever owned this place certainly did intend for Charlie to come inside. Someone would only kill a victim outside Freddy's if they didn't have access to the secret facilities inside. This means the Magenta Man must have been an outsider to Freddy's Pizza Place at the time, and not the owner of the building. An outsider who became an insider by the time of the new Freddy's 11 years later, when you watch Foxy's performer enter the MCI room. So, who owned the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place? Adult Henry and his company Fazbear Entertainment owned the building in FNAF 6 far in the future, but did they own it from the beginning? Discovering who owned and founded the original 1972 Pizza Place is a crucial question, because whoever did could not have been the Magenta Man. So let's add that to our quest log, and keep an eye for any more clues moving forward. And while we're at it, we should also look for anyone with a motive to kill Charlie specifically, even though she didn't actually die, but became an immortal android instead. Let's take a quick overview of our timeline points covered so far. Juniors was back in England, and it's where young William went to escape the abusive Yellow/Orange Man. In 1972, the classic animatronics were made for the original restaurant Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, which became the struggling restaurant after Take Cake to the Children happened there. Henry left the family for a while to create his own company, Fazbear Entertainment. He then returned years later to found the Fear partnership with his father William's company, Afton Robotics. One of their first co-productions was Fredbear's Family Diner, started in 1982. Michael worked at Fredbear's as a night guard. When Fredbear's opened, Teen Henry/Phone Guy/Foxy upgraded to his adult form Cassette Man, i.e. the man in the Fredbear suit. In 1983, the cartoon Fredbear and Friends launched, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened for the first time in summer. William took the first night guard week at the new Freddy's in summer 1983 when the MCI happened, and Michael took the week after. Phone Guy, now the obsolete teen version of Henry, who still carried a spark of his remnant, took the supporting role as the head of security at the new Freddy's. FNAF 2 closed for the first time shortly after the MCI due to the blood and mucus seeping from the robots. Soon afterward, Fredbear's Family Diner, the sister location to the new Freddy's, also closed, and adult Henry/Cassette Man vanished. The new and improved Freddy's opened again in November 1997 under new management. As before, William was the first guard. And save them, another massacre resulting in possessed robots prompted William to transfer again to day shift, leaving the second week to Michael. Teen Michael was bitten by Fredbear during the party before Night 7, where he was replaced by William, who returned under the fake name Fritz Smith. By 1992, Fredbear's Family Diner had been converted into the deadly FNAF 1 building, focused on harvesting the souls of hapless night guards hired for minimum wage without being warned of the danger. Phone Guy acted as a night guard, but was devoured by Yellowbear/Dummy Voice before FNAF 1 began. William returned to jam the soul harvesting operation under the fake name Mike Schmidt, still trying to tinker with the robots and fix what was broken with them. Dummy Voice made recordings for William using the now-dead Phone Guy's voice, and occasionally tormented him during the game. After FNAF 1, William returned to the rundown building to break the animatronics as Shadow Freddy lured them to the secret room. William took refuge from the child's spirits in a barefront version of Spring Bonnie. Then all the spring locks suddenly gave out all at once, turning William into Springtrap. And Phone Guy's voice announced in the last call of FNAF 3 that the secret rooms at most locations were being sealed, including this one. This last phone call was recorded at the FNAF 1 building at a time when several other locations existed, and after the robots of the building had been destroyed. A call that was recorded long after the real Phone Guy was dead. Later on, Dummy Voice reopened Fredbear's for a third time at Chica's Party World, bringing back Funtime Chica as the restaurant's star this time. An act that put Charlie's avatar Chica over both Michael's Freddy and Henry's Fredbear. Dummy Voice brought Springtrap out and gave both him and the building a makeover, updating him to the Stage 01 look with the button. And then she sealed Springtrap back into the secret room while keeping the arcade machines that had been in the secret room out on the arcade floor. Years later, Michael Afton returned to Fredbear's, which was being reopened yet again as Fazbear's Fright. Although he was over 50, to Phone Dude, Michael still looked like a teenager, so Phone Dude talked to him like a peer. Being an immortal android has its benefits. After freeing William from being imprisoned in Springtrap, first William, then Michael tried to infiltrate the sister location complex to get Blora and the other family members out. Then they escaped in Michael's metal endoskeleton, which led them to hide in a way that hadn't been possible before. After they escaped, adult Henry finally reappeared and remodeled the original 1972 pizza place into FNAF 6's Pizzeria Simulator, and used his ability to mimic William's voice to lure the escaped robots into a trap, and end everything, once and for all. Or at least, that was the plan. The fire in FNAF 3 only happens if Happiest Day hasn't been achieved, and yet a fire is referenced twice in Sister Location, so the later FNAF games assume a darker timeline, while the original 4 games' one story plot was supposed to end with Happiest Day. That's what we have so far, so let's take stock of what we still need to cover. We've yet to look at FNAF World, FNAF 4, and Ultimate Custom Night. We've only briefly touched on Circus Baby's Pizza World. A great many things are waiting to be discovered even in FNAF 1, 2, and 3 as well. FNAF is built like a Metroidvania. Information power-ups we learned in one area can unlock new secrets even in places we've already visited 100 times. But putting some of these on a physical map of FNAF locations is impossible, because some of them aren't physical locations at all, but completely virtual spaces. The most straightforward example is FNAF World. This entire world is the flip side, as Fredbear calls it, a haven from the real world outside. Everything is happy and colorful and game-like. A person can lose themselves in this friendly place and never look back, which I think is an intentional design decision, because FNAF World is actually a Matrix-like prison for souls. Old Man Consequences ventured too deep into this code when he explored it, and now can't find his way back anymore. No matter what characters we put in our game party, the identity of the character we, the player, actually represent never changes. In Deskman's house, Old Man Consequence's pond, or the first 2 glitch worlds, our player's character is always Freddy, and our avatar turns into a human face on level 3 of the glitch worlds. Remember how Dummy Voice spoke for FNAF World as her own domain in the conversation with ScottGames.com? Fredbear like Yendo was Dummy Voice's overseer in Sister Location, and Adventure Fredbear is our overseer in FNAF World. And while Fredbear claims to be our friend, it becomes increasingly apparent as the story progresses that Fredbear isn't telling us everything. If we follow Fredbear's instructions to the letter, we get a troll ending and are mocked for our stupidity, and remain stuck in this virtual prison forever. It's only when another Fredbear-like entity with a different personality temporarily takes control of Venture Fredbear that we learn of another possible path, finding the clocks. If we follow the advice of this second Golden Bear Ghost who's sympathetic to Michael, we activate all the minigames that are encountered in FNAF 3, and find another up portal in the main level of FNAF World, just like all the up portals we used in the glitch worlds below. A portal that takes us out of FNAF World entirely, and gives us the real canon ending of the game, as the same entity who talked to us at the beginning finds us again, showing that FNAF World has always been just another layer of game code from the start. And FNAF World is definitely canon. Lullbit, the orange-faced Funtime Foxy, starts as an NPC vendor in FNAF World, but plays a significant role in Sister Location's Custom Night. Now, that Custom Night might not be canon, but Lullbit's mask replaces Ennard's mask in Sister Location's control module if Funtime Foxy kills you a certain number of times. So Lullbit does appear in Sister Location proper, an area that's undoubtedly canon. This means there are parts of FNAF World that are canon, too. FNAF World, while it's glitching in meta-ness, makes no secret that it's a virtual world. The entire map looks like a human brain. But such digital places do not always have to look 8-bit or cartoony to not be real. While fantastic, Ultimate Custom Night gives the first impression of being a natural, physical place. The fan and various office fixtures seem natural, even if no one would ever design an office quite like this. But then cracks start to appear in this reality, as our experiences grow more and more absurd. And then we learn why. Creatures from FNAF world start to appear on our desk as if nothing whatsoever is wrong. And Old Man Consequences is here too, and we can visit him. Ultimate Custom Night is part of FNAF world. Toy Chica, a version of Charlie's avatar, even has her own enemy here. And the final reward for running the most hardcore gauntlet in history is seeing an image of FNAF 1 Yellow Bear sitting there, writhing, as if they were tormenting some other soul trapped inside them, and suffering themselves in the act of torturing the other. Didn't FNAF 1 Yellow Bear / Dummy Voice say something about sending us to the flip side while she was pretending to be Phone Guy? I'm sorry if all these mentions of Dummy Voice the Pretender liking Charlie's avatar Chica and somehow being associated with Fredbear are getting repetitive, but establishing patterns is a critical element of making discoveries. And I'm also setting the stage to address the game we must cover to have any chance of understanding the original 4 games 1 story. The final chapter boss fight, FNAF 4. Because although FNAF 4 might look real, there's no way it's a real physical place, and we start running into time and space paradoxes immediately. First, both the Bite of 83 and the Bite of 87 happened at Freddy's, not Fredbear's Family Diner. But somehow FNAF 4 takes place at Fredbear's. And FNAF 4 does reference the Bite of 87. It was in all the trailers, with Foxy having an 87 in his eyes while everyone kept asking, was it me? Was it me? Or was it me? This is the repeated question I believe our friend FNAF 1 Yellow Bear / Dummy Voice answers with her infamous catchphrase, it's me. Fredbear's is closed in 1987. There's no way that bite happened there. What's more, 1987 is years in the past by the time FNAF 4 actually takes place. A warped version of the FNAF 1 Night 1 phone call can be heard in the background of the room defense section. The very phone call where Dummy Voice, again pretending to be Phone Guy, tells us that the Bite of 87 victim has been clinging to life for years now. Michael, seeing his younger form in FNAF 4, dreads his own upcoming birthday party, an event everyone else seems to be looking forward to, but one that Michael dreads because he already knows how it ends. Then we find more time and space problems. The toy animatronics were built only for the second opening of the new Freddy's in November 1987, and were scrapped soon afterward. But tiny versions of them still surround Charlie's sprite in the park, and Tiny Toy Chica is still missing her beak as if it were somehow the real Toy Chica in diminished form. 8-bit vision is often more symbolic than 2020. The toys seemed disbelievingly huge in the Save Them minigame, dwarfing even the withered robots who towered over them in real life. But now the tide has turned, and they're the size of actual toys, and Toy Chica doesn't seem happy about it. Could the abstracted 8-bit games be showing us how much remnant each robot had at the time? But in any case, toys and Mangle were only physically intact in 1987. And then we catch a glimpse of William Afton as a guard while he was still healthy and robust, not the giraffe skeleton we see in Save Them. This is a scene of William from his first shift at the new Freddy's in summer 1983, from before the toys even existed. William from 1983, Fredbear's from 1983, the toys from 1987, the Bite of 1987, and a phone call from around 1992. And to make things worse, FNAF 6 shows the Bite of 87 victim finally dying, which dates FNAF 4 after FNAF 1. Where in time is Carmen Sandiego? Logic would dictate that the current time must be equal to or later than the last confirmed point of the timeline. So all this must be happening after FNAF 1, years after the Bite of 87. But how could so many elements from so many different places and times exist together in a real place? And then, all of FNAF 4's reality goes haywire. Flowers have bear heads on them. A flying cupcake eats us instead. Frontals move so fast they distort light. Plushtrap falls up into his chair. Pills / IVs / flowers may not exist by the bed at any given point in time, as if Schrodinger's cat was the doctor. Foxy provably teleports into our closet when the robot radar cheat is on. Fredbear and Nightmare both teleport their severed heads onto our bed. The robots make the sound of crunching gravel as they walk across the smooth hardwood floors, etc. FNAF 4 cannot be a real physical place. It must be another Matrix, like FNAF World on UCN. And everywhere we go outside the diner, there's a plushie of Fredbear who's constantly spying on us. Just like that little Fredbear we found in Dummy Voice / Yendo's private office and sister location. That plush Fredbear was holding a 16-button control that matches FNAF 4's world map, suggesting that FNAF 4 is also part of Dummy Voice's domain. Boundary-breaking freewalkers who explored Help Wanted's out-of-bounds areas discovered the fun with plushtrap and bedroom defense areas really were connected on the same floor of the Afton house. These rooms are patterned after real rooms in the Afton house. But the replicas in the sister location complex and the virtual simulations in FNAF 4 are both fakes designed to look real. Whoever designed these simulations knew the layout of the Afton house perfectly. It's almost like Dummy Voice is a major character whose story has been very carefully hidden. They must certainly be a member of the Afton family. Why does Jimmy/Michael, the Bite of 87 victim who must be FNAF 4's crying child, look like a young boy when he must have been at least a teen by 1987? We must be seeing memories from the past. Several memories all combined into one experience, showing us many scenes from history in a fused presentation that never actually happened as depicted. Here's an example. In Fun with Plushtrap, we play the role of a guard in a hallway with 2 doorways on either side, as a version of Spring Bonnie with no frontal decorations is making its way towards us. We must use a flashlight to stun the attacking animatronic by exploiting its light sensitivity. Does anything about this scene seem familiar? The FNAF 2 night guards also had to stop Foxy and other attacking robots in a dark hallway in front of them with a flashlight, and the hallway in front of the FNAF 2 office has 2 doorways on either side. Fun with Plushtrap is a FNAF 2 night guard simulator. And yet, neither Michael nor Fritz Smith ever saw Spring Bonnie attacking during their time in FNAF 2. This memory can't belong to either of them. It must have been from the first week of FNAF 2, where William was the guard during the Save Them massacre. The first Phasma Fright story, Into the Pit, shows a version of Spring Bonnie causing the death of 6 children in the past. A public massacre rather than a hidden one, as everyone in the restaurant started running. A careful examination of the Save Them map shows 5 bodies but 6 pools of blood, as one of them is hiding under the puppets box. So the possibility of Spring Bonnie being the attacking robot during Save Them seems strong. On Night 6 of FNAF 2, Phone Guy says the Save Them massacre was performed by someone using a spare yellow suit. There are only 2 yellow suits, Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, and the mention of a spare suit is curious. On Night 4 of FNAF 3, Phone Guy said temporary costumes were provided on short notice after the classic suits at Freddy's were temporarily retired. This was a response to the multiple spring lock failure incident at the sister location, Fredbear's. These spare/temporary costumes looked different/incomplete compared to the normal ones they were replacing. This is why Phone Guy said to deflect questions about the new look. So if we find a suit that looks odd or is missing decorations, it might be one of these spare replacement suits, and might be the one that attacked during Save Them. Typically, Spring Bonnie is supposed to have 2 buttons and a bow tie from FNAF World and Fruity Maze, or a single button as seen in the Stage 01 and on Springtrap. But Plushtrap from our FNAF 4 Save Them simulator only has a bare front, and doesn't seem like a finished version of Spring Bonnie at all. So Plushtrap would definitely count as a spare yellow suit and qualify for a Save Them attacker. On Night 5 of FNAF 3, Phone Guy says management has noticed the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved from its spot in the secret room. He then warns employees that this particular robot was not safe to wear under any circumstances, meaning that this version of Spring Bonnie was dangerous and off limits even before it got rained on. Either there was something wrong with it, or there was already someone in it. Recall that Fredbear, the unpossessed robot, would never have been programmed to sneak its way into the secret room to bite Golden Freddy's kid. And Fredbear, again the unpossessed robot, also shouldn't have the ability to enter the secret room under its own power. Similarly, Spare Spring Bonnie, the unpossessed robot, would never have hunted down partygoers throughout the halls of the building, and then made a point of stashing their bodies in places where they would not have been seen on camera. Spare Spring Bonnie, again once additionally the unpossessed robot, would not have been able to leave the secret room, then re-enter it under its own power. Yet management noticed that it had been noticeably moved without explanation. It was a spare suit, commissioned in 1983. This spare suit would not have been employed by the company in 1987 and kept in storage, and shouldn't have been moving about at all. So, I think there's a compelling chance that both Fredbear and Spare Spring Bonnie were actually possessed before these events happened. And William had a face-off against this possessed Spare Spring Bonnie suit during the Save Them massacre, and stopped it from killing more people instead of wearing it and causing the massacre himself, as is commonly believed. William famously wears a version of Spring Bonnie, the one William wore at Fredbear's family diner. But this version of Spring Bonnie was the one with a single button from the Stage 1 minigame, not the one with a bare front. Every spring suit a person wears absorbs a bit of their remnant, so suits aren't usually supposed to be shared. But we do catch a glimpse of William fitting a teenage employee a foot shorter than him into a bare front version of Spring Bonnie in a memory from FNAF 4, a memory of Fat William from 1983. So someone certainly did wear the Spare Spring Bonnie suit before Save Them. And while William did work with this suit, It didn't belong to him. And if Plushtrap's aggressiveness is any judge, he didn't control it, either. So we're still testing the theory that Fun with Plushtrap is a Save Them simulator. And if we could prove the attacking animatronic in Save Them was Spare Spring Bonnie, this model holds up. So if we could prove that the attacker in Save Them wasn't Fredbear, it must have been Spare Spring Bonnie. And for a clue, let's study what happens to souls once they're absorbed into robots. FNAF 3's phantoms are not illusions. Each time they jump scare us, they jam our electronics, producing genuine changes in the world. And certain phantoms target specific systems, so they're all different, but they seem to have something in common. Whenever a soul is absorbed into a robot, its ghost takes the form of that robot. Foxy's kid looks like Foxy, Chica's kid looks like Chica, etc. That's why Susie's ghostly guardian in the Phasma Fright story Coming Home looks like a thunderingly huge classic Chica, not the kid with a halo and wings one would usually expect from an angel. This gives us a way to see which ghost was claimed by which robot just by looking at them. The only way any ghost would end up looking like a golden bear would be if they were absorbed, or bitten, by Fredbear, the only golden bear robot. So right away in FNAF 2, we can tell that the Fredbear suit was, in fact, possessed, because there's already a ghost here who looks like Fredbear. And going by RWQ's 4 upper teeth and considerably greater height than Toy Bonnie, there's already a ghost here who looks like Spring Bonnie, too. Golden Freddy, quote-unquote, was actually the first phantom animatronic we ever met, even though we didn't know what it was at the time. And since one of the secret files of FNAF 2 actually calls this character Yellow Bear instead of Golden Freddy, there seems to be some ambiguity over its actual canon name. This is why I prefer to use Yellow Bear to describe them, as I think this character is far more complex than it seems. Especially since there seem to be 2 Golden Bear ghosts. We see FNAF 2 Yellow Bear again in FNAF 3. If you brighten the shadowy bear sprite who makes rare cameo appearances in the office, you'll find it turns golden, and uses precisely the same model as FNAF 2 Yellow Bear. Except for this time, the secret FNAF 3 files give it a different name entirely, Shadow Freddy. Shadow Freddy also appeared in FNAF 2, and had exactly the same physical shape as Yellow Bear, down to the slightest detail. Except now, their eyes and teeth are lit up brightly. And if you brighten the rare appearance in parts and service with video enhancement software, Shadow Freddy actually turns purple, the opposite color to yellow on the color wheel. Yet one more case of 2 characters of FNAF seeming similar, yet opposite at the same time. It does seem that 2 ghosts absorbed by the same robot have very similar or even identical appearances, potentially acting as evil twins of each other. Both Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy look like withered Fredbear when viewed in first-person perspective, without 8-bit Vision's ability to reveal hidden details. So correctly identifying which entity we're talking about is crucial to understanding the story. Closely examining and brightening Phantom Freddy in FNAF 3 reveals he is also yellow in color, and linked to the same robot shape as Shadow Freddy's office cameo, although they have the same bird appearance as the other FNAF 3 Phantoms. This is the entity I believe to be the real Golden Freddy, taking Fredbear's shape while still being linked to Michael's avatar, at least in name. It seems that Fredbear must have bitten a version of Michael at some point in the past, and Give Gifts Give Life suggests he was the 5th child in the MCI, the one who didn't get a robot of their own. That's because Fredbear already belonged to someone else at the time. Because while the unpossessed Fredbear robot both wouldn't and couldn't make such a secret room attack on their own, devouring souls is the very thing Shadow Freddy loves to do, according to FNAF World. Shadow Freddy was the one who bit young Michael during the MCI, piloting Fredbear from within. It seems she got into Fredbear first even before then. Both Shadow Freddy and our friend Dummy Voice have controlled a version of Fredbear. I wonder if they could be the same person. Fredbear isn't a good fit for a Save Them attacker. Such a brazen public assault goes against Shadow Freddy's sneaky modus operandi, and Shadow Freddy does not look like a spare replacement suit. So, although it might be hard to see from their slouching posture, Yellow Bear should have 2 buns and a bow tie also. The same look that Adventure Fredbear and Psychic Friend Fredbear have. No decorations are missing. So this version of Fredbear isn't a hastily constructed spare, and could not have been the spare yellow suit associated with Save Them. So while most people, myself included, first assumed that the spare yellow suit phone guy was talking about was Yellow Bear, Spring Bonnie was really the animatronic responsible for Save Them. Mangle also gives us a clue about Save Them in FNAF 2's secret files. They said, he was here. But Mangle is one of the only 2 robots that William didn't deactivate and save them, other than the puppet. And if Mangle was made from the same Foxy suit that William wore in Foxy Go-Go, it would also contain some of William's own remnant and count as a version of him. This might explain why the main Foxy head in Mangle's quest had purple eyes. Royal purple for William instead of their usual physical yellow. 8-bit graphics definitely reveal hidden aspects of characters that we wouldn't normally see. Mangle was talking about the Save Them attacker that day, the possessed Spare Spring Bonnie suit, an attacker that Mangle identified as a he. This means our friend Shadow Freddy wasn't the attacker that day, because Dummy Voice is a girl. As strange as it might seem, Fun with Plushtrap really is based on a memory of William Afton's, where he stopped the possessed Spare Spring Bonnie suit's rampage with a flashlight, a story told abstractly by Plushtrap and the long rabbit-shaped shadow he cast down the hall, a scene where William Afton played the hero, facing off against a second mysterious antagonist this time. Save Them was far in the past at the time of FNAF 4, and the Bite of 87 victim had been bedridden for years already. This is symbolized by the plushie of Freddy, Michael's avatar, laying on the bed where the Bite victim would have been hitched to the IV. Traumatic memories remain vivid long after they happen, and FNAF 4 is a curated selection of least favorite memories. Michael working at Fredbear's despite hating it there, William facing off against a monster he might have actually created, and our bedroom defenders seeing Michael broken on their bed, doing what they could to help him, as if they felt guilty about what happened to him. FNAF 4 doesn't have one protagonist, it has three. Fun with Plushtrap could only be a memory of William Afton's. The 8-bit sections are Michael reliving the horror of being tormented and bitten, yet even after Michael dies for real, the bedroom defender continues their vigil. A character who isn't Michael or William, but who is related to them both. Like Sister Location's 3 simulated rooms from the Afton house, these are 3 different locations in virtual space with 3 different occupants, all under the watchful eye of Dummy Voice. Whenever William succeeds at a game of Fun with Plushtrap, it immediately takes 2 hours off the bedroom defender's battle. This shows William and the bedroom defender are connected in some fashion, and are experiencing these scenes simultaneously as parts of the same matrix. And Michael's 8-bit story only advances when the bedroom defender succeeds in his battle. So William, Michael, and the kid-like bedroom defender's souls are all imprisoned in the same network, each one able to affect the others. Michael has already been bitten by Shadow Freddy's robot, Fredbear. Phone Guy has already been devoured by FNAF 1 Yellow Bear, who giggle like a girl whenever they attack. And William has already been spring-trapped, because Plushtrap actually exists in FNAF 4 with that name. Sammy's FNAF 4 sprite is carrying a plushtrap that's Springtrap Green, even though Sammy calls it a Spring Bonnie Finger Trap. Springtrap was already a thing by the time of FNAF 4, long after FNAF 1, so William has already been captured and forcefully linked to this virtual network. This is why I think our bedroom defender is Phone Guy, Michael's older brother, Teen Henry, still stuck in the place fake Phone Guy / Dummy Voice called the Flip Side in FNAF 1, as she was tormenting William, promising she would see him there. See you on the flip side. Which is the very thing Adventure Fredbear called FNAF World, another virtual environment. FNAF 4 might be a nightmare, but it's a constructed, curated nightmare simultaneously shared by 3 protagonists who are all being forced to relive some of their most painful memories. This cannot be a natural dream. And just like in the Fazbear Fright story What We Found, several memories can be mashed together in any given scene to create a uniquely horrifying experience. FNAF 4 contains a vast wealth of evidence and lore, but to use any of it, we first need to understand what FNAF 4 is and how to decode it. And all this comes to a peak at Michael's digitally reenacted birthday party. The bite scene in FNAF 4 isn't the bite of 83, and it also isn't the bite of 87. It's both. There are 5 kids here, just like the MCI from 1983, and only 4 of these kids get characters / masks of their own, with the 5th kid getting bitten by Fredbear, again just like the MCI and its aftermath, give gifts, give life. The Fredbear on stage is casting a purple shadow, showing Shadow Freddy already owned this robot even before the bite victim was put inside. But the Bite of 87 happened on the last day FNAF 2 was open, a week after Save Them, an event where only Michael was hurt, 4 years after the MCI kids had already been put into their robots. And that's also what we see in FNAF 4. The 4 bullies wearing the robot masks are the first 4 MCI kids who are now in their robots, and Michael is once again the kid who got bitten. He looks like a kid here because that's what his younger form looked like when he was bitten back in 1983, even if the version of him that suffered the second bite in 87 was his teen form. FNAF 4 combines Michael's memories of being the bite victim in both 83 and 87, and then mashes them up with his memories of working at Fredbear's back in 1982. This is another type of time linking. The third time we've seen this super efficient and super confusing evidence encoding technique used in FNAF. With this knowledge in hand, FNAF 4 gives us a rare opportunity to actually see which kid was stuffed into which robot. Michael Afton plays the role of both bite victims, with his younger version becoming the real Golden Freddy after being bitten by Fredbear. It seems that Shadow Freddy finds Michael, the current Freddy, especially tasty for some reason. Teen Henry / phone guy would be our older brother Foxy. He felt guilty in the aftermath of sending his younger brother into a dangerous situation where he then got hurt. And as we covered in the last chapter, the FNAF for Bonnie Bully is who Sammy's youngest form, Balloon Boy, evolves into. Each of the Horcrux animatronics already contains some of the remnant of their respective kids, so the puppet was trying to put the MCI kids into the robots they already owned, robots that already had part of the remnant inside them. In the fourth closet, Carlton and Michael recombined each fragment of the amalgam kids chasing their floating drawings the same way. We might have thought that stuffing the kids into robots was an act of gruesome murder at first, but this is how the puppet tried to put the broken MCI kids back together in the games. The puppet placed those springsuit heads on the Give Gifts kids, not William. So while William did murder the kids by stuffing them in the Mirror Universe novels, the puppet was just trying to fix them in the games. A springlock failure didn't kill the MCI kids, and Shadow Freddy took care of at least one of them. Perhaps Michael wasn't the only one that day. So, young Henry went into Foxy, who already had part of Henry in it, and young Sammy went into Bonnie, who already had part of Sammy in it too. That part is straightforward. So when we look at the Chica Bully, we find... Wait, who is that? Charlie never got to bond with classic Chica. She was split into the puppet and JJ instead. And while some form of her probably did end up in Toy Chica, classic Chica is the one we're looking at here. There was a picture of the twins cheering at someone else popping out of a birthday cake in Chica, getting an Afton birthday of their own. Someone with a lot of orange on them. This means while Charlie never claimed classic Chica, it seems that somebody else did. Let's take a good, close look at the bullies now. Do you notice anything different about the Chica Bully when compared to the others? That's right. They're the shortest one, which suggests they're younger than the other children. Sammy, as Charlie's twin, would be the same age as her, but Sammy is taller than the Chica Bully. So whoever is in Chica joined the family after 1972 and inherited Charlie's unused classic Chica robot. In FNAF 2, we see Withered Chica and Toy Chica react differently to the puppet's paper pal, with Withered Chica blocking it from view as if to say no, while Toy Chica poses next to the puppet's paper pal, tilting her head at the same angle. She has the very same wide semicircular smile, as if to say, how do I look? It looks like Withered Chica, the old version of classic Chica, and Toy Chica have different souls in them. Perhaps that's why Toy Chica keeps tearing off her orange beak, so she looks more puppet-like. Orange isn't her color. There is a picture in FNAF 2 of Freddy, Bonnie, and orange-beaked Chica all singing together. All of them have empty eyes that might suggest a performer in a spring suit set to suit mode. So whoever Chica's kid is, they seem to be friends with both Michael and Sammy. This reminds me of the Mangle Marauders picture, where Michael and Sammy are working together to tear apart Mangle, and a kid in an orange shirt is helping them. Could this mysterious third Mangle Marauder also be the kid in Chica? Of all of Charlie's friends in the graphic novels, which one always wore the orange shirt? Anyways, I believe this mystery kid is the kid in Chica. Now things get weird. Michael's avatar was Freddy, so he ought to have been stuffed into Freddy. But this didn't happen because Michael was bitten by Fredbear, and his remnant went into Fredbear instead, forming the second Golden Bear ghost, Golden Freddy, and forming a situation where the remnant from two kids ended up in one robot, resulting in either two ghosts haunting the very same suit, or both spirits combining into an amalgamation with two personalities. If you try to touch Golden Freddy, quote-unquote, and save them, there are three possible outcomes. Yellow Bear's eyes might light up as it immediately teleports away. Yellow Bear's eyes might not light up as it immediately teleports away. Or the minigame might instantly end in a red flash, suggesting the Yellow Bear just killed you. Suggesting the Yellow Bear just killed Michael. Even though Golden Freddy was supposed to be a version of him, a split-off shard of his own remnant. The same duality in Yellow Bear appears in the first trilogy of novels. When Charlie and her friends encounter the real Golden Freddy and the Silver Eyes, they instinctively know that he is their friend Michael, and Michael saves all of them when the other four animatronics are about to strike, proving that he means them no harm. Although, after Michael asserts himself and actually stands up in a rare show of determination, Golden Freddy slumps back down to the ground again before anyone can touch him. And at some point, while William distracts everyone by grabbing Charlie, Golden Freddy completely disappears. But John and his group actually find Fredbear, the real robot, in the Twisted Ones, and John detects a flicker in Fredbear's eye when he appeals to the robots to help them save Charlie. The moment Fredbear wakes up, all the others wake up too, almost like Fredbear was controlling them, and when John mentions novel William was Charlie, the robots jump into action, bash their way out of Kleberg's basement, making a huge mess, and head off to William's lair. The curious thing about this scene is that although John made contact with the soul inside Fredbear, John never detected the tiniest presence of Michael during this encounter, even though John made a direct point of searching for it. But he feels no trace of the presence of Michael and Fredbear, a feeling which had been so clear and overwhelming in the book before. But as John and company move to chase the speeding robots and almost lose their way, they do encounter a different Freddy-like entity, a bear seemingly made of shadow, waiting for them in a field with a canopy of heavy electrical wires above it, most like those metal cables that infested the game restaurants. And when the group approaches, the shadow somehow seems to stay ahead of them without actually moving, as if it were more a projection than a physical robot, a ghost. But it seems to want them to follow it, and so they do, and Jared's party ends up right where they need to go, catching up to the robots they were following at William's lair. So I think in the Twisted Ones, John, Clay, and Jessica encountered Shadow Freddy instead of Golden Freddy, and it told them to follow me, just like it asked the other possessed robots to do in FNAF 3. Shadow Freddy and Golden Freddy seem to have another power struggle in FNAF World, a world seemingly controlled by Adventure Fredbear, who, as described before, pretends to be a friend but doesn't actually tell us everything and eventually leads us to a bad troll ending if we trust them. However, if we wait at points during Adventure Fredbear's dialogue, a second entity and/or personality suddenly takes over the narrative, and directs us to find the clocks instead, leading to the good ending of FNAF World. This second entity, which I call Glitch Bear, is very glitchy and ghostly, and an actual friend instead of a play-acting antagonist. By Adventure Fredbear's own words, FNAF World is the flip side. The very place Dummy Voice / Shadow Freddy planned to send William in FNAF 1, a realm that Shadow Freddy also controlled and considered her own, because she spoke for FNAF World in the conversation with Scott Games. So, I believe Shadow Freddy is actually the controlling presence in Adventure Fredbear, and now and then, Golden Freddy grabs control just long enough to try and derail Shadow Freddy's plans and send the story in a positive direction. So, Shadow Freddy and Golden Freddy are both tangled up inside Fredbear. But this is not the only time where the remnant of two children became entangled with each other, because we have yet to talk about the last, weirdest bully, the Freddy Bully. With the addition of Chica's kid to the family, the 4 children and grandchildren the Aftons had in 1972 have become 5 by 1983. That number would be 6 if we counted Elizabeth, but her story happened off to the side and she's already accounted for with Baby. Elizabeth wasn't involved in the MCI, at least not as one of the victims. But now we're in a situation where only one child and one robot haven't been accounted for yet. The young version of Charlie present at the MCI, and Michael's robot, Freddy. If only one child was put into each robot in the aftermath of the MCI, and every single child present in the MCI was stuffed into a robot, and young Sammy, young Henry, young Michael, and Orange Shirt Mystery Kid have already been accounted for, young Charlie must have been the one stuffed into Michael's robot, Freddy. Well, this is weird. If this happened, it would result in another conflicted entity that seemed to have 2 identities besides Yellow Bear. There's no way a crazy idea like this will fly unless we find some evidence that shows this theory is actually viable. So, what sort of things should we look for? Well, we need evidence that Freddy was exhibiting signs of a split personality, like, say, having 2 jump scares. One jump scare would be super goofy, like when the power runs out and Freddy pops up after a few 10 seconds and goes boogie woogie, making a point of showing his big, blue, very human-like eyes. And the other jump scare could hit us completely without warning in the middle of a night, like suddenly Freddy runs out from behind our chair and gets directly in our face in a way no other robot does in FNAF 1. And then, bam! No eyes, just 2 glowing inhuman pinpricks of light. Sort of like how Mangle goes from being super goofy and upside down in the office hallway to right side up with possessed pinprick eyes. Like some weird entity with glowing eyes is controlling both Mangle and Freddy. Or we need evidence that Freddy was undergoing some sort of internal conflict. Like, one moment we have a perfectly normal picture of Freddy in the West Hall corridor showing 2 perfectly normal eyes. And then, suddenly, that picture changes to one where Freddy has 1 normal eye and 1 hollow blank eye. and suddenly they're trying to tear off their own head or something, with only one arm since the other is still holding the microphone like everything's fine. And we need more than just some indication that Freddy was possessed. We'd also need a clue about who the possessing force was. Some strange link between possessed Freddy and another character we already knew about and were researching. Like, what if Freddy had a handprint in his face? An artifact from someone the robot once tried to bite. The Freddy Files makes a point of highlighting this on Freddy's face. And you know what would be really odd? What if we found that same handprint on someone else's face? Like, we're back in the West Hall corner, looking at the picture of Freddy, and it turns into the image of possessed Freddy trying to rip off his own head, but then it changes a third time, into another face missing its eyes completely. As if whatever corrupting darkness was taking it over now had complete control. A face with a handprint from before could still be seen, and it appears along with the sound of a girl giggling. In this picture we find the face of... Yellow Bear? That's the ghost we were just talking about. Wait. Hold on. If regular Freddy is Michael, doesn't that mean that the yellow bear in this picture isn't Michael? Golden Freddy is friendly to Michael. He wouldn't be trying to tear off his head. He might simply recombine with him if they were both together in the same suit. But this Golden Bear ghost is giggling like a girl. Okay, so if this version of Yellow Bear isn't Michael, then the only other person it could be would be the MCI kid whose remnant got stuffed into Freddy along with him. But wait, Dummy Voice is the one who's telling William they're going to see him on the flip side, and Dummy Voice controlled Fredbear in FNAF World except when the real Golden Freddy interrupted her. And Dummy Voice is the one who named the third opening of Fredbear's after Charlie's favorite character, Chica. But now we've established that 3 of the MCI kids, young Michael, young Henry, and young Sammy, were definitely children of the Afton family itself, along with that mystery kid with the orange shirt who was one of the Mangle Marauders, and possessed the same incredible android strength that Michael and Sammy did. All 5 of the MCI kids had synthetic flesh that refused to die after being stuffed. They kept on breathing and producing blood and mucus even when maimed beyond recognition. And who but the Aftons would have a party in a secret room where customers are forbidden to enter? The kid who got stuffed into Freddy must have also been a child of the Afton family. And the Afton family only had 2 girls at the time, Charlie and Elizabeth. And Elizabeth has already been accounted for in Baby. So the invading ghost inside Freddy, who keeps trying to control him from within, would have to be the remaining MCI Afton kid. And the only person left that they could be is Charlie. Dummy Voice is Charlie. And that ghost who looked like Fredbear in the fully corrupted Freddy picture had to be Charlie too. Charlie must be one of the 2 Golden Bear ghosts. But since Michael is the real Golden Freddy, Charlie would have to be the other one. The Freddy Bully is very strange. It's the only bully whose eyes don't have lights inside, and retains 2 seemingly empty eye sockets, just like our friend Yellow Bear in the Possessed Freddy poster, and also in Yellow Bear's FNAF 1 jump scare. The same jump scare that appears when we put 1987 in FNAF 1's custom night, suggesting that the character with a handprint on their face who just attacked caused the bite of 87. FNAF 1 Yellow Bear crashes our game when they attack, just like Shadow Bonnie does in FNAF 2, devouring our soul so we don't come back as a stuffed robot this time. A shadow attack. So whatever FNAF 1 Yellow Bear / Dummy Voice / Charlie attacks, we were just attacked by Shadow Freddy. A version of Charlie must be Shadow Freddy. Remember how none of the other robots in Clay's basement could move until Fredbear woke up? Someone is controlling the other robots against their will. There is evidence that most of our animatronic family members don't actually want to attack us. The Biddy-Bab soldiers requested that we don't hold it against us, for example. The robots in FNAF AR frequently glitch out and jump scare us in this aggressive, irrational state. Special Delivery Toy Freddy doesn't even remember killing us. It begs us to say something, as the reason for why our body is face-planting against the floor remains a complete mystery to him, like someone else took him over for a while and made his robotic frame attack instead. In FNAF 4, Michael still thinks the 4 plushies off the bed are still his friends. And the voice who assured us they are all still our friends, and asked if we still believe this, speaks in Pigtail Girl's text color rather than Psychic Friend Fredbear's. Then the robots do something particularly weird in both FNAF 1 and the FNAF 1 section of Help Wanted. They repeatedly walk right past the open office doors without attacking us. Study the FNAF 1 floor plan very carefully. The East and West Hall quarters are at the end of their respective hallways. Bonnie and Chica love to walk up to the corner cameras and grin up at us dramatically. It makes for great theater, but there's a logistical snag in this plan. The doorways to the guard office are not at the end of the halls, and the only way to get to the quarters is to walk past them. Bonnie and Chica actually do this twice in FNAF 1, because after posing for the corner cameras, they waltz past the open doors again to grin at us through the windows. And it's only after the second trip, when they're finally in attack position, that we have to close the doors to avoid getting eaten. You could even watch this happen in Help Wanted, as Bonnie and Chica start to walk down the halls, blissfully passing the office on the way to the quarters. This only changes if you blast them with the hall lights when they're right outside the door and make what they're doing painfully obvious. Then they'll stop, seem to wake up, and slowly turn their heads to give you a dirty look, and attack you if you still haven't bothered to close the door. Bonnie and Chica seem to be going through the motions and don't actually want to kill us, but just like the Biddy Babs and Toy Freddy, some other force is making them do it. We get a hint who this is in Special Delivery. Golden Freddy somehow knows the attack programming of all the other robots, and they change attack patterns on the fly, requiring the player to identify whose attacks Golden Freddy is about to use and employ the correct counter strategy. It's like Golden Freddy, quote-unquote, knows how the attacks of all the other robots work, and might actually be the mastermind who created them, then forced all the other robots to use them. Speaking of one robot to rule them all, we see shades of this in FNAF 4's Matrix. FNAF 4's bedroom defense is eerily similar to FNAF 1, with Bonnie attacking left and Chica attacking right, while we juggle opening and closing two doors. But as the week progresses, a strange shift happens, as Nightmare Fredbear suddenly takes the place of all the attacking robots. And when we finally invoke 20-20-20 mode, another callback to FNAF 1, we finally meet this sinister controller face to face. A character named Nightmare takes Nightmare Fredbear's place and the place of all the Nightmare animatronics. Nightmare is a transparent ghost who's otherwise a perfect physical copy of Fredbear, a ghost who resided in Fredbear and took Fredbear's physical shape when the robot absorbed them, a golden bear ghost, but a corrupted one. So who is Nightmare? Who is this ghost with a human brain showing inside their head that's either their own brain or the one they bit out of someone else? Their golden hat and bow tie leave a suggestion of Golden Freddy, but the graphics files of FNAF 4 tell a different story. Because you find a graphics title that says Nightmare at the bottom of a long series of folders in the FNAF 4 texture folder named Shadow Freddy Extras. Nightmare is Shadow Freddy, not Golden Freddy, and they're the force controlling the other FNAF 4 robots, and, by extension, the FNAF 1 robots as well. And from Mangle getting hacked and suddenly developing glowing eyes and a new opposite nature, it seems Shadow Freddy is also in control in FNAF 2, where Shadow Freddy is there in the background, watching you. And Yellow Bear, a fusion of both your best friend and worst enemy, is attacking you in the office. Shadow Freddy is also there under FNAF 3 office cameos. Instead of having a traditional custom night, which would require William's technician skills to adjust the animatronics, the Final Night 6 challenge is simply called Nightmare Mode. So, Shadow Freddy, also known as Nightmare, was the first ghost absorbed by the robot Fredbear, and she became the first Golden Bear ghost who owned the version of Fredbear stationed at Freddy's from then on, an evil twin to young Michael Shade who became the real Golden Freddy. And while Michael is a boy, Shadow Freddy has a girl's voice, just like Dummy Voice in Sister Location. Dummy Voice herself possessed Yendo, who is also a version of Fredbear, and Yendo behaved like FNAF 1 Yellow Bear during the Custom Night Challenge, sporting an updated look for an old character. An old character who has been secretly pulling strings and engineering our demise in FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, FNAF World, Sister Location, and even beyond. As Phone Guy's daughter, Charlie would have the power to perfectly mimic his voice and produce all of Yellow Bear / Shadow Freddy's girlish giggling. She is the only member of the Afton family who even comes close to fitting all of our exacting criteria, and the pieces all fall into place around her flawlessly. This would make Charlie the secret main antagonist of almost all the FNAF games. It also sacks her the role as the main protagonist in the Mirror Universe novels. It's still a pretty wild idea, though, and we're still going to need more evidence to make it viable. Do we know of anything else that might link Charlie to the second force controlling Freddy? And any more evidence suggesting the second force was also Shadow Freddy? I'd like to show you some more of the child pictures, because several of them together make a sequence of events very relevant to this conversation. We already covered the first two images from FNAF 2 in the last chapter. The first shows Freddy, seemingly in suit mode with someone inside, singing out musical notes. It seems Michael is an excellent singer. A little kid wearing a purplish magenta shirt and blue jeans is listening to him and dancing. Meanwhile, in the second image, another performer in Fredbear is attempting to sing, trying to draw the attention of 4 children nearby. This is our jealous older brother Henry, once again trying to prove that he's better than younger brother Michael, and that Fredbear is superior to Freddy in every way. However, this pun fails, because all Henry can manage to get out are waves of noise devoid of notes. Of the 4 children around, only 1 is listening to him. The other 3 are listening to a second voice off screen, who actually can sing. This stacks with what we saw in the Fredbear and Friends cartoon. Fredbear is supposed to be the hero, but Freddy is the one who still has the lead singer's microphone and gets the full-face protagonist camera shot. Overarching authority or not, real talent is still more important than appearances. But that's not the end of the story. A third frame can be found in FNAF 3, which seems like an updated version of the first frame. In it, a taller child wearing the same purple-magenta shirt and blue pants is still dancing to Freddy's singing. And Freddy looks a bit different, clearly having visible eyes now. But there's something else. Freddy isn't singing at generic black musical notes anymore, now the notes are golden. Golden Freddy is singing with Michael's musical voice. And now we come to the fourth frame. This last picture is found, ironically enough, in FNAF 1, where it all started, and shows only one character, Freddy, but there's something wrong with them. Instead of the happy expression from before, Freddy now has a severe and determined look, as if they're forcing the notes out, and both his eyes have different pupil sizes. One eye looks angry, while the other one looks horrified. And the notes coming out of their mouth aren't golden anymore. They're purple. Shadow purple. And their head almost seems to be floating off their shoulders, connected by a very slim neck. This picture might seem really familiar, because the conflicted Freddy picture we saw around the corner has the same mismatched eyes and thin exposed metal neck. If you brighten the Freddy mask Michael dreams of being behind in the FNAF 2 Between Night cutscenes, you'll see something shocking. The mask turns shadow purple. Michael might control the endoskeleton, but the outer shell he's imprisoned in belongs to Shadow Freddy. A very similar situation to what I believe happened with William in Springtrap. The girl who loved to hear Freddy sing in 2 of those pictures is wearing a purple magenta shirt and blue jeans, the same colors Charlie said she always wore in the Silver Eyes, and the same colors Charlie's Park Sprite is wearing in FNAF 4. It's almost like Charlie liked Michael's voice so much she decided to take it for herself, much in the way Yandere Toy Chica collected body parts she wanted from a variety of victims, loving them for what they were rather than who they were. There is one detail in the third picture that doesn't quite mesh with this model though. The girl wearing Charlie's colors has golden blonde hair like Susie did in Fruity Maze. Barry Taylor, aka Dr. Spookalicious, and his sister Casey, aka Vampire Phoenix 999, pointed out in our long debate about the pink eye that Susie's red bow and purple shirt make her look a lot like Charlie's FNAF 4 sprite. The only odd detail is her blonde hair. I agree with this observation, but want to add my own tweak to it. Susie looks so similar because she's a version of Charlie. Whenever people try to tell me that FNAF wasn't planned out in advance, I like to show them one of the pictures in FNAF 1. Charlie's nuclear family is there in the West Hall, with Father Henry holding his naughty little girl by the ear. But in the picture just northeast of it, we see another little girl with precisely the same shape as Charlie in the previous image, flying away with a murder of balloons. But she has blonde hair, an appearance of Susie from FNAF 6's Fruity Maze in FNAF 1. The Fazbear Fright story Coming Home talks about Susie having another sister her age, Samantha, who was similar and yet opposite to herself. I wonder if Samantha is a stand-in for Charlie in this story, and if these 2 sisters are yet another Jekyll and Hyde case of 2 entities in FNAF being related yet opposite, just like the yellow/orange man, or purple guy and the magenta man, or the sneaky quiet MCI killer versus the brazen save-them attacker who left pools of blood in their wake. Susie was a victim of tragedy in Coming Home, and also in the story of the games, because her name is in the 3rd tombstone of FNAF 6's Lorekeeper ending. If you superimpose this tombstone onto the ending screen of FNAF 3, she lines up with Chica, the character who also acted as her guardian in Coming Home. But Susie looks a lot different than our Chica Bully mystery kid, and classic Chica was the one who acted as Susie's angelic guardian, not the character Susie ended up possessing herself. So how can both Mystery Kid and Susie be associated with Chica? Because there's more than one version of Chica. 6 tombstones line up with Save Them's 6 pools of blood and the 6 victims from the first Fazbear Fright story Into the Pit. Susie was a Save Them victim, 4 years after Mystery Kid had already been stuffed into Classic Chica. And since Classic Chica acts as Susie's guardian in Coming Home, they are different characters. So I put Susie into Toy Chica in my theory models, because the toys did start acting strangely after Save Them when a new set of souls were put into them. Toy Chica loves to pose next to the paper pal of Charlie's puppet, showing an uncanny resemblance when her beak is gone. That makes for an excellent transition, because Susie/Toy Chica shares a common friend with our new arch-antagonist Shadow Freddy, the puppet. FNAF 6 canonically revealed that the puppet has Remnant from Henry's daughter in it, so the puppet is a version of Charlie too. Toy Chica enjoyed her photo shot with the puppet's paper pal, showing the same head tilt and huge semicircular smile, and they share the same taste in music, if you'll excuse the pun, because the puppet loves to hear the music box. FNAF 1 and Help Wanted revealed Freddy has a music box inside him too. The puppet's area in FNAF 2 is called the prize corner. One guy said that the music box was on the prize counter, a subset of this room, but there's no music box visible in the room at all. The only thing on the prize counter is a plushie of Freddy, so that plushie must be the music box. This is the very same music box Freddy plushie seen on the bed in FNAF 4, and it's even called such in the Halloween FNAF 4 teaser, "Don't Wake the Baby," a phrase Markiplier coined while winding the music box to ward off the puppet. And lurking in the darkness behind Freddy is a creature of singular, particular interest to my theories. Nightmarian, a perfect fusion of the puppet and Shadow Freddy. In the Halloween version of FNAF 4, Nightmarian does everything Nightmare does. They even share the rare single-frame jumpscare that only Nightmare and FNAF 1 Yellowbear/Shadow Freddy have. Actually, there's one more. The puppet has an unused final jumpscare frame in FNAF 2, but this time its highlights are suddenly gone, looking far angrier and more sinister than before, looking more like another version of Shadow Freddy than ever. The Halloween update was widely believed to be non-canon fun, except for one bizarre detail. Scott posted that Nightmare Balloon Boy, out of all the weird colorful characters in the update, was somehow canon, showing that at least part of the update touched on actual lore. But where there's smoke, there's fire, and after seeing the teaser with a key shaped like Spring Bonnie's head, I wondered if other details might be canon also. And I found one. Like many of Scott's images, Nightmarian's digital screaming jump scare has details that can only be seen when brightened, revealing human-like eyeballs filled with bloodshot veins. Such a deliberately hidden detail is certainly not a mistake, and we should try to find a match with it in the rest of the lore. In Nightmarian's case, we do. The very same bloodshot glowing eyes can be found in FNAF 3's Phantom Puppet, a certainly canon character in a certainly canon game. If Sammy is canon in the Halloween version, it only follows that Charlie would be too. So, am I making all this up? Can I prove that there are indeed two versions of Charlie active and present in FNAF 3, above and beyond the puppet and Nightmare/Shadow Freddy simply appearing together in the same game? Yes, because JJ/Ella also appears in FNAF 3. Have you noticed that the face we see in the monitor just before Phantom BB attacks is different from BB's actual face? It doesn't have any glowing eyes. And when you brighten both images, the mix of revealed colors is different too. This doesn't happen in Ultimate Custom Night because Phantom BB's warning monitor face really is the same one that jump scares you. So who is this mysterious twin of BB who grins at us from the monitor in FNAF 3? The Guess Who teaser for FNAF 3 asked that very question. BB and JJ are twins in just about every aspect except for color. And one tiny detail. Balloon Boy has opaque red cheeks, while JJ has translucent magenta cheeks that shine slightly from reflected inner light. We don't get many details about the head in the broken toy box. The hat, inner skeleton, and face are all missing, and the brown hair could belong to either BB or JJ, but the cheek dots on that skull are translucent, resembling JJ instead of BB, but the cheeks also look red instead of magenta. How can this be? Have you ever played The Witness? It is a puzzle where you navigate a broken elevator up a series of floors. Each floor has differently colored background light, and the actual puzzle key to the elevator never changes, but as the light changes, our perception of the puzzle also changes, revealing multiple solutions that activate different floors. FNAF 3 also uses this trick because the light in the office is tinted. Toy Bonnie looks gray instead of his usual blue because there's no blue hue in the background light, and magenta is a purplish color composed of both red and blue. And without blue, JJ's magenta cheeks only reflect red light. So the translucent cheeks on the Balloon Kid head in the toy box could indeed belong to JJ. The Guess Who FNAF 3 teaser has the same hat colors as JJ's face on the monitor. Twins are always a fun element in a mystery. So JJ/Ella/Charlie's youngest android version is grinning out the monitor at us in FNAF 3, and FNAF 6 shows that the puppet did survive FNAF 3 and is also present in that game. Because the puppet is inside Lefty, the shadowy bear who had reprogrammed to hunt down the puppet and fuse with it. So there we have it. Two versions of Charlie are present in FNAF 3. The puppet, who is still trying to put everything back together, and JJ, who has the same empty black eyes as our friend Shadow Freddy's office cameos. There's another bizarre hidden detail in FNAF 3, and involves the child pictures placed throughout the entire building. We've established that several pictures like these in other games have revealed parts of the story, and child pictures were used in Charlie's novels as a way for Golden Freddy to warn Jason. They also represented different parts of the soul of each of the children in the amalgam Carlton visited. All those children had several shards of themselves, each chasing their own copy of a drawing. Carlton and Michael worked to put these fractured pieces of each kid back together into a healthier, more alive whole again. Refusing pieces of a fractured soul is possible, and that's what the puppet was trying to do with the MCI kids in Give Gifts, Give Life. With the symbolic importance of FNAF's child pictures in mind, let's re-explore FNAF 3. In Foxy's room, the creepy Freddy picture on the wall reflects the grinning face of an animatronic on the floor below. This picture is definitely haunted. But what's even weirder is that there are two of them. One in Foxy's room, and one in the puppet's hallway on camera 8. In fact, every picture that appears in the puppet's hall has a twin somewhere else in the building. And the really crazy thing is that they're all mere images of each other. This is easiest to see in the puppet's surprise picture because the word surprise itself is horizontally inverted, but the same holds for all the others. Every single picture is both similar to and the perfect opposite of its twin. That thing we keep seeing in FNAF again and again and again. Is this some sort of trick? Could camera 8 be broken and creating some sort of illusion? No, because when we see Springtrap standing in this hallway, his long and short ears still have the same orientation they do everywhere else in the building. Camera 8 is working just fine. Every single individual picture in the puppet's hallway has been perfectly horizontally inverted. This is another deliberate design decision that can't be an accident. There are two twin entities in this building, and one is the twisted reflection of the other. As if the puppet and Shadow Freddy were the perfect opposite of each other. Two versions of Charlie. One is trying to fix everything, while the other tries to tear everything apart. In the fourth closet, both our protagonist Teen Charlie and her nemesis, Baby, can trace their origin back to Ella, Charlie's first android form. Each has a piece of Ella's memories. Both claim to be Charlie at different points in the story, and both actually had a right to that claim to their fractured, shared remnant. If there was any doubt in my mind that the puppet and Shadow Freddy were split pieces of the soul of Charlie, it ended in FNAF 6. Because of Henry's very curious design decisions for Lefty, the shadowy bear who ate the puppet. Lefty's full name is Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, and Extract. Lefty was designed to search for the puppet's unique bracelet signature, and then actually fuse with the puppet, so the remnant of both entities became one. Similar to how Carlton and Michael put the pieces of the other picture kids back together. But Lefty's blueprint comes with a warning. Behavior upon suit seal not guaranteed. So the moment Lefty fuses with a puppet, Henry will no longer be able to control Lefty. This is a baffling decision. Lefty is a robot capable of devouring human souls, yet Henry's own design gives this robot the freedom to do whatever she wants after the fusion with the puppet happens. This sounds disbelievingly dangerous. Why deliberately take this terrible risk when Lefty could simply capture the puppet and imprison it safely? It's about to get burned up anyway. This design only makes sense if causing a fusion between the puppet and Lefty was of personal importance to Henry. And Henry gives the personal reason for this design at the end of FNAF 6 by calling this fusion, My Daughter. The fusion, not the puppet specifically. Teen Henry, aka Phone Guy, never liked that puppet thing. It wasn't one of his creations, and he certainly didn't consider it his daughter. He only calls Lefty My Daughter after this fusion happens, as if he didn't trace that identity from the puppet, but from the robot that imprisoned and fused with her instead. You see, Lefty was not the original name for this robot. The new name was probably inspired by how Lefty's right ear suddenly folds back when their actual in-game jump scare happens, and that of Lefty's two mismatched eyes, the vacant left one might be in charge during this jump scare. I can't look at Lefty without being reminded of the conflicted Freddy poster from FNAF 1, where both Michael and Shadow Freddy's remnant vied for control of their shared body. You might even call FNAF 2 Yellow Bear Righty, because only their right ear is intact. The reference to Yellow Bear is far from random, because Lefty's endoskeleton has a weird set of perfectly circular ears. There are only two bear robots we've seen before that had ears like this, and Funtime Freddy is already accounted for as part of Molten Freddy. This only leaves one candidate for Lefty's endoskeleton, Funtime Freddy's golden-eyed knockoff clone, Yendo, the version of Fredbear in FNAF 5, and the personal robot avatar of the overseer of the sister location facility, our old friend Dummy Voice, otherwise known as Shadow Freddy. Henry told his now recombined daughter that he couldn't save her back in Take Cake to the Children, so he's trying to save her again now. So he took steps to make sure his daughter's soul was whole again before attempting to send her to the afterlife. A last act of love from a father to his daughter, and the reason for Lefty's bizarre design. I keep calling Charlie's trilogy of novels a mirror universe, and many details are inverted from how they appear in the games, but sometimes there are parallels too. At the end of the fourth closet, something incredible happens, just as Baby is about to tear Teen Charlie apart. Our Charlie agrees with Baby that she shouldn't be there, and during Baby's moment of confusion, Charlie adds, "Neither of us were." And with that, she activates Henry's suicide robot in the closet behind her, sending its sword-like blade not only through herself, but also spearing Baby and the Ella doll caught between them, physically connecting all three robots with a bridge of living metal. Baby is an incredibly tough robot, but this living metal attack critically hits her in a mortal way. And as Elizabeth realizes her time is over, she laments, "It's not fair. I never had a life." But then Charlie reaches out and takes Elizabeth's hand, and pushes Ella along the blade towards Elizabeth with the last of her strength, as Charlie starts to send her own remnant through the blade into Baby, the robot who was always supposed to be her own fourth closet adult form. Our Charlie doesn't take over Baby, though. As she continues to transfer, Charlie starts to forget things, beginning with how to see, and then how to talk as she hears John calling her name but can no longer respond. Remnant is made of memories, the life experiences that make people who they are. And when the remnant is gone, there's nothing left of that person either. And so the lives of both Teen Charlie and Elizabeth came to an end together. But that isn't the end of the story. John sees the aftermath of this confrontation and knows of Charlie's fate. Back at the hospital, Clay claims they didn't find Charlie and will keep looking for her, but John says they're not going to find her, and then leaves. And goes to the graveyard, where he finds the tombstones of Charlotte and Henry Emily surrounded by scrubby grass and dirt, a lifeless contrast to the rest of the well-kept graveyard. But as John approaches these tombstones and their area devoid of life, he senses someone else nearby, and slowly turns to see someone he instantly recognizes standing beneath a tree a few yards away where the grass grew lush and green. She instantly recognizes him and beckons to him. John glances between the tombstones and his new companion in a moment of uncertainty, and then leaves the dead past behind as he takes the hand of the living woman before him. John's new companion wasn't Charlie, but she wasn't Elizabeth either. She was both. In Steven Universe, when you fuse two beings, both of them cease to exist as they form a third being made from the energy of them both. And Teen Charlie and Elizabeth were two broken girls made from pieces of the real soul of Henry's daughter. Teen Charlie spent the novels trying to protect her friends and put back together what was broken. Teen Charlie was like the puppet. Elizabeth spent the novels trying to selfishly steal Charlie's privileged life full of love, destroying anyone in her way. Elizabeth was like Shadow Freddy. It was only when the two of them recombined and filled in what each one was missing from the other that they could both finally live, and embrace John as adult Charlotte for the first time. The names, personalities, and relationships between characters might have changed between universes, but both stories focus on putting the pieces of Henry's daughter back together. The blade of Henry's robot was probably made of silver. Dave used a silver knife on Officer Dunn in the Silver Eyes, which cut into things Dunn didn't realize he had just before the world went dark. After this murder, Dave claimed to have loved and made a new animatronic of his own. Silver is a legendary metal credited with killing creatures like werewolves, or babies, that were otherwise unkillable. Perhaps silver has a special affinity for draining the remnant out of anyone or anything that it hits. It would be ironic if Dave created Wolfie from the remnant of Officer Dunn after killing him with a silver knife. Have you ever heard of legends about seeing swords or possessed suits of armor? Spring suits work on the principle that metal can be living material just like flesh, and once the spring locks connect the pilot to their robot, it becomes part of their body, and their soul can flow into it. But spring suits could be a modern high-tech application of an ancient principle, so a good old-fashioned sword could still do the job. In the FNAF 6 tapes, Adult Henry/Cassette Man talked about a monster that he unwittingly helped to create. But this monster can't be William, because William is Henry's father and the one who created him instead. I think Henry's monster was Shadow Freddy. They got that form by inhabiting the golden knockoff of Freddy that Henry created and imbued with his own envy, rage, and negativity, turning Fredbear into a sort of anti-Freddy, the vainglorious golden idol of a huge soul-sucking corporation, instead of the friendly brown mascot of a family business dedicated to celebrating and protecting joy. I think part of Henry's plan was to finally end Fredbear, and Nightmare along with him. Henry even tried to disband Fazbear Entertainment itself at the end of FNAF 6, to take down the whole corrupt corporation, too. Although Help Wanted showed us that this goal met with limited success. The theme of putting broken people back together resonates all through FNAF. Every member of the family is broken in some way through their entire multiple Horcrux scheme. The puppet endeavors to put the shattered pieces of each child back together again, while Mangle has to constantly reassemble herself each day. Shadow Bonnie in FNAF World even shows off his ability to split into pieces and recombine together again in his attack animations, and William had to put his life back together again after escaping his guardians in England. Broken people, living with horrible scars. And yet, just like Energizer Bunny, they keep going, trying to make the best of things, and do what they can to find that elusive path that leads to a good ending. An array of amazing stories, both horrifying and inspiring at once. FNAF has massive volumes of lore that, at first glance, seem bizarre to the point of being random. So when we do find an idea that lines up with many aspects of this chaotic lore in a way that both makes sense and tells a compelling story, the odds of it being a coincidence are low. Scott said point blank that the puzzle of FNAF was solvable. So, somewhere in the array of all possible theory models, there must be one model that stacks flawlessly with every piece of lore. Finding that one path might be challenging, and the word challenging might be a dramatic understatement. Doctor Strange had to explore millions of possible timelines until he found the one outcome where the heroes could finally defeat Thanos, and he had a magic gem that allowed him to see all possibilities, a luxury that real-life theorists don't have. Finding that one needle solution in the haystack of possibilities can test someone's sanity, especially when you don't know which haystack the needle is in the first place. But I believe a solution to FNAF does exist, and there must be a logical way to narrow down our search of the infinite to find it. I imagine you have a lot of questions about the theory model I'm presenting today. I have not only proposed there is an antagonist in the FNAF games more terrifying than William Afton, I've even dared to suggest that she was our missing children incident attacker instead of him. Going from William being acquitted of the MCI in the novels despite being guilty, to William being convicted of the MCI in the games despite being innocent, actually works perfectly if one world is the mirror universe of the other. But I've proposed a lot of off-the-wall ideas today, and a level of skepticism is certainly healthy in this case. A theorist should always do everything possible to try and break their own theories to detect flaws, and send their ideas up for peer review to see if other theorists can find chinks in their logical armor that they missed. Only the real truth can stand up to any level of scrutiny, and there's a limit to how much any single person can know. So if you can find a real, logical problem in someone else's reasoning, you ought to respectfully tell them. They might dislike you in the short term, but they'll appreciate it in the long. And I know I still don't have all the answers about FNAF, because even after half a decade of bashing my head against FNAF's colorfully painted brick wall, there are still some things I'm missing. I only have a vague idea when and where on the timeline El Chip's Mexican restaurant appears, or why Adult Henry suddenly disappeared in 1983, only to return decades later to send Phone Dude a message about where to find the secret room in FNAF 3. It's my hope that I'll at least make enough progress here to open up new avenues of research so others can find the details that I missed. So let's do some additional testing. It seems crazy to suggest that any creature in FNAF could be worse than Big Bad William, the man behind the slaughter, except that a precedent for this does exist. FNAF World got us all psyched up for the final battle with Purplegeist and all his mixed purple and magenta evilness, only to have Rage Gang Rainbow step at him out of nowhere and completely take over the boss fight herself. People were also psyched to finally see Agony William, the Voltron of garbage, in the Stitch Wraith event at the end of the Fazbear Frights novel, The Cliffs, until a sinister robot girl who looked a lot like Eleanor, who in turn looks a lot like Baby, left the fusion after the puppet joined it and left to cause more mayhem elsewhere. The Stitch Wraith openly remarked that this robot girl seemed even more threatening than William. And let's not forget about Andrew, the shadowy ghost boy in the alligator mask who was haunting patient 1280, a version of William Afton. Andrew was the one actually causing all the paranormal events in the hospital that the nurses blamed William for. Andrew was the second presence detected in William's brain scan. And Andrew was the one who actually wanted to go to the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center, not William. The moment they arrived, Andrew detonated William like a bomb, and then made his own way into the center to infect as many toys as possible with his own negative energy, setting the stage for many other stories in the series, like Fetch and Out of Stock, while what remained of William seemed to have been sucked into a portal, perhaps to hell. This makes me wonder how the Agony Voltron William that Jake and Andrew encounter much later in the timeline can be the same version of William. Perhaps more than one aspect of William existed as well, and that in his haste to punish the version of William who hurt him, Andrew might have latched onto an innocent version of William by mistake. This story makes you think more about Springtrap and his two different faces the more I hear it, especially since patient 1280 looks like the flesh that was once imprisoned in Springtrap. I have long suspected that the spare spring bodysuit William got trapped inside was already haunted before he put it on. So, yes, I do believe there are other entities in the FNAF universe more frightening than William. Let's go back to that whole weird dummy voice idea I kicked off the Shadow Freddy investigation with. Baby's voice can be heard in the background of many other characters in Ultimate Custom Night, which we established was part of Shadow Freddy's domain of FNAF World. So, this is just Baby being in control, right? I'm making a huge deal out of a subjective voice personality difference on Night 4 of Sister Location to create some sort of out-of-control epic anime headcanon! Except for a few problems. We heard Baby herself getting scooped in the background while we were leaving through the vents in the first night of Sister Location, right after we conveniently shocked her 3 times. In her stunned state, Baby certainly wasn't scooping herself, and we learned the fates of all the other known robots at later points in time. So this had to be Baby being scooped on Night 1. This means every other instance of Baby's voice that we heard throughout Sister Location was someone else mimicking her voice, right up to the point where Baby's voice told us, in third person, that Circus Baby had already been scooped today, just before Michael himself gets hit. So yes, Baby's voice was successfully mimicked all throughout Sister Location. That wasn't a drill. And it makes me think back to the novels, where Elizabeth/Baby was able to mimic Teen Charlie almost perfectly except for her personality quirks. Teen Charlie and Elizabeth shared remnant through Ella. This means one could mimic the other just as easily as Afton children can mimic their parents. So if Baby could mimic Charlie in the Mirror Universe novels, it's not much of a stretch to assume Charlie could mimic Baby in the games. Well, alright, we can't seem to crush the silly idea of dummy voice/Shadow Freddy being Charlie right out of the gate. So let's try an exercise in inductive reasoning and put our creativity to work, testing a potential, yet still unproven, theoretical model. For this exercise, we're going to make 2 assumptions. First, that a dark, twisted version of Charlie is Shadow Freddy, the first ghost Fredbear absorbed, who now looks like him despite her favorite character being Chica. Second, that a dark version of Charlie's twin brother Sammy became Shadow Bonnie, the first ghost absorbed into the spare spring bodysuit, and the same suit that William later became Springtrapped in, much in the same way that Andrew haunted patient 1280. And now, let's aim this model at the convoluted history of Fredbear's family diner, to see if anything else makes more sense if we do. Our timeline currently reads as follows. William was trapped in the spare spring bodysuit while the building still had its FNAF 1 layout. When FNAF 1 was remodeled into Chica's party world, the secret room Springtrap was trapped in was reopened. The arcade machines were taken out, and Springtrap was given a makeover into a Stage 1 look with a button. Then, when Chica's party world closed, Springtrap was resealed back up in the same secret room that was still in the northeast corner of the building. At the same time, the arcade machines were left outside and can be seen in Night 1 of FNAF 3 before the secret room is opened. While complex, the timeline presented does match the observed details very well, but there's one glaring issue with it. It assumes that Springtrap himself would along with this plan without complaint. That someone was able to unseal Springtrap, have him sit still long enough for a makeover, give him a productive role in the children's entertainment industry, then get him to happily waltz right back into his ancient prison again to spend another decade and a half with nothing but William's company to pass the years. Phone Dude had to start running the instant he opened the secret room and never came back. So how could anyone get Springtrap to do all these things without getting torn into chicken strips? It doesn't seem possible. At least, not at first. However, under the model we're testing now, JG Charlie/Shadow Freddy has been in control of the local restaurants ever since adult Henry disappeared. Cassette Man vanished when Fredbear's closed in 1983 and only resumed control again in FNAF 6. So, Charlie is in charge. And under this model, the force imprisoning William in Springtrap is the ghost of Charlie's twin brother, Sammy, the teen version of Sammy who became Shadow Bonnie. Sammy is the closest person to Charlie in the world, so he's bound to go along with whatever plan she had in store. So under this model, what seemed impossible and nonsensical now makes a strange amount of sense. But would Sammy really agree to more than a decade of additional solitary confinement with William in the secret room after Chica's Party World closed, while Charlie ran around freely running the company? It doesn't seem fair. However, Sammy might not have a choice in the matter. In Ultimate Custom Night, one of Nightmare's lines is, "The shadow fears me." If there are only two shadows, and Nightmare herself is Shadow Freddy, this line must mean Shadow Bonnie fears Shadow Freddy. So, JJ Charlie wouldn't really have to ask Sammy to do anything. She could just order him to take William back into their shared prison. And after seemingly taking power away from their father, Charlie is the only person in the world who could boss Sammy around like this. Let's test another theory. Was Charlie really the local boss of Fazbear Entertainment from 1987 to Sister Location? That's another big claim, and one we're going to need more evidence for. So let's go back to the survival logbook for a moment. In Chapter 2, we identified 3 authors. Teen Henry/Phone Guy was the book's original publisher, who vainly filled it with great full-page shots of his own avatar, Foxy. William Afton was the first guard with the almost erased text. He wrote the name Mike as his name at the start of the book for his alter ego, Mike Schmidt. And Michael Afton/Freddy is the second guard, who wrote with bright red ink and crossed out the name Mike at the beginning, but had no other name to replace it with. But there's a 4th author we haven't covered yet. The boss. Just below the crossed out Mike is a yellow post-it note that says, "Sorry, looks like somebody's already written in this one. You don't mind, right?" This person doesn't care if we mind or not. And a second note on page 52 orders us to disregard the entire Springsuit quiz and not speak of it to anyone. Phone Guy put that quiz in the book. This directive didn't come from him. But Phone Guy was never the highest authority at Freddy's. He didn't like the puppet or Foxy's kid-friendly makeover, but upper management went over his head, so he had to live with them. We've seen yellow post-it notes like this before in the Freddy files. One even had a purple thumbtack that bore a remarkable resemblance to Fredbear's hat. And there's another spooky detail that both the Freddy files and Survival Logbook share. They've both been edited. By ghosts. Page 94 of the Freddy files shows the 16-panel map for Michael's neighborhood in FNAF 4, and every room except one. Do you see where Charlie's park is supposed to be above the fence? It's gone. And so is Charlie. This map has been hacked, and whoever did it considered this a mission to be necessary. Ghost hacking is much easier to notice in the Survival Logbook. Foxy's standardized quiz for each night starts to change in the later nights. Phrases like, "I can hear sounds," "I'm scared," and "I can't see" start to mysteriously replace the routine daily questions. And then, finally, we get, "It was for me." Elsewhere, William scrawled, "The party was for you," showing that he knew exactly who the logbook would be given to next. William knew who we were and that we were the bite victim. And Michael confirms this by writing the exact time of the bite in the logbook, an event he knew well, having been there. And our boss knew it too, a boss who had a particular interest in tormenting Michael with creepy book edits. The capitalized phrase, "It's me," can also be found throughout the word search, FNAF 1 Yellowbear's famous catchphrase. Ever wonder how a hulking animatronic could scrawl "It's me" on the wall of the East Hall an inch behind a delicate spiderweb without disturbing it? Ghost edits have been a thing since FNAF 1. So it does look like Golden Freddy is the one behind these ghost edits. But here we have a discrepancy. Because after a secret name was found in the logbook, these lines have widely been credited to Cassidy, and not to Michael, the real Golden Freddy. So is my theory about a younger version of Michael becoming Golden Freddy wrong? I don't think so, because we're dealing with 2 ghosts who look like Fredbear, and a few details seem to associate Cassidy with Shadow Freddy instead. First, the capitalized "It's me" is sus. Remember how Sans talks in lowercase while Papyrus always talks in all caps? FNAF World Golden Freddy's loading screen says, "It's me," with only the first letter of each word capitalized. Meanwhile, in the FNAF 2 dream sequences, Michael and/or the real Golden Freddy says, "It's me," entirely in lowercase. This suggests young Michael is not the one editing the logbook. The Curse of Dreadbear DLC for Help Wanted featured an interesting Easter egg. In the prize-claiming screen between games, we might find ourselves surrounded by 3 clown posters and a set of darts we can use to throw at them. Each dart makes the sound of Freddy's nose honk. But if you hit all 3, The scene changes, and a curtain rises to show the words, "It's me," in all caps. But instead of turning golden, the entire area turns purple and blue, the shadow colors. Another indication that girl giggling FNAF 1 Yellow Bear is not our friend Michael. So, what else do we know about Cassidy? Not very much. She makes a very brief appearance in the fourth closet as one of the kids trapped in the amalgam William is experimenting with, and we learn only one detail about her. She's a girl with long black hair. Digging deeper, we learn more about the origin of the name Cassidy. It means clever and curly-haired. So we're looking for a smart and/or crafty girl with long black curly hair. And in the Fazbear Fright story The New Kid, we score a hit. Devin watches his new yellow-haired friend Kelsey put on Fredbear in that story and seemingly get crushed by a springlock failure. After several days of pondering if his new friend was dead, Devin returns to the abandoned building to find Fredbear sitting in a pool of blood. But when Devin tiptoes up to Fredbear and looks inside, he doesn't see Kelsey. Another body is inside the spring suit with curly black hair. The end of the story confirms that Kelsey is still alive, and trying to befriend another misfit at a different school in the hopes of luring them back to the building too. A necessary step, because the next thing Fredbear does is bite down on Devin's hand, and slowly begin to swallow him, inch by inch. It seems that if Kelsey couldn't bring Fredbear to the soul food, he decided to bring the soul food to Fredbear. A scam he's been running for who knows how long. Bringing back who knows how many children to Fredbear's waiting jaws. The kid with curly black hair inside Fredbear might seem alone, but they must have had a lot of company by then. Golden Freddy doesn't eat souls, but according to FNAF World, that's Shadow Freddy's entire deal. Now, I want you to think back. Is there any point during the FNAF games where we've seen a girl with long black hair who might fit Cassidy's description? We see many kids in FNAF 6, but the only one with long black hair was this one, Henry's daughter from Security Puppet. The girl I've spent the entire video so far calling Charlie, a version of which became Shadow Freddy. So Shadow Freddy must be Cassidy instead of Golden Freddy. And Charlie/Cassidy was indeed the boss when the survival logbook was published. I realize I've been calling Henry's daughter in the games Charlie in all my videos so far, and in the interest of consistency, I should keep doing that at least for the rest of this video. But names can change between universes. Henry Emily and Michael Brooks became Aftons. I think some of Charlie's other novel friends became family members also. And since the canon name of Henry's daughter in the games has never overtly been revealed, her actual name could have been Cassidy from the very beginning. I originally planned on making the argument that JJ Charlie became Shadow Freddy in the next chapter, but it's impossible to build a fully functional timeline without her massive footprint on the story being revealed. I know many people won't accept my arguments about Cassidy being her arch-nemesis, but after showing how so many lore elements stack together in this theory model, and parrying a multitude of counter-arguments attempting to debunk it, and showing how this model reveals meaningful story beats in areas that would otherwise appear to be pure chaos, I feel confident enough in this theory to add to my current assumptions and deploy it as a Metroidvania power-up when trying to progress through FNAF's mystery. Understanding Yellow Bear's nature as a conflicted fusion between Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy has particular importance in FNAF's story, because they aren't the only entity who's like this. Remember how Andrew possessed Patient 1280, resulting in him showing two consciousnesses on his brain scan? And now Patient 1280 looks very much like the flesh that used to be in Springtrap? Our friend Springtrap is also a conflicted fusion, and Glitchtrap was scanned from pieces of Springtrap. So whoever was in Springtrap before would also be in Glitchtrap afterwards, no matter how many people that might be. While he's first forming, Glitchtrap goes through several odd changes. He starts out Springtrap green, then turns full purple for a moment, like Purple Shadow Body in the Glitch minigame, then settles on his solid-looking yellow Spring Bonnie-like costume. But everything turns purple again when Glitchtrap tries to merge with us, and if we block this attack in time, he turns into a green plushie. As they say, you can't tell a book by its cover, so these rare looks into the deeper nature of Glitchtrap are fascinating. Many people think Glitchtrap is just William, the final boss and greatest evil in the universe. But for most of the game, Glitchtrap isn't hostile, and when he does attack at the end, his eyes light up. Like Baby's eyes change when she goes from being friendly to switching to attack mode in Help Wanted, like something else is suddenly taking over and trying to absorb our soul. This is so much like something Shadow Freddy would do that I have to wonder if another Shadow might be at work here. We hear Glitchtrap's voice in Security Breach's teasers, But it's not the same as Williams from Sister Location. It's younger and whinier, as if Williams' voice had been combined with an angsty teen. Glitchtrap might not be the only character returning for a security breach, because I still have a lot of questions about just how final the ending to FNAF 6 was. Hand Unit said that Phasma Entertainment was no longer a corporate entity after Henry's dramatic monologue. But FE is still very much alive and help wanted, FNAF AR, and Security Breach. Scrap Baby and Funtime Freddy were trapped behind narrow metal openings, but Scrap Baby has already put herself back together before after being reduced to the living metal cables Michael hurled into the sewer. Couldn't she just unravel again to squeeze through the narrow opening? Mold Freddy was already a living mass of wires. That opening shouldn't even slow him down, and Scraptrap found a wooden exit instead of a metal one that he could probably smash and get out with. As for Lefty's amalgamation of Shadow Freddy and the puppet, we never even see a picture of them in the ending at all. So I think some of our old friends might still be out there. If Springtrap could survive the transition to a digital world, others could too. The color tweaking in the later nights of Help Wanted's FNAF 1 and Repair Freddy segments make Freddy look like, and act, like Nightmare. And in her own little gravity-free pocket dimension covered with screens to spy on and control the other robots, Nightmare does still seem to be in control. And this isn't the last time we see Shadow Freddy. A claw that looks just like Nightmare's reaches out and scrapes very physical-looking nails into the ground in the teasers to Security Breach. All eyes might be on Glitchtrap and Vanny going into the next game, but that's just the way mystery authors like it. In mysteries, generally, the character we see the least, and know the least about, ends up being the most important one. So I think Security Breach might unfold like a Quentin Tarantino movie. Glitchtrap and Vanny are the new mobsters in town, trying to either destroy the system or take it over for themselves. But what people don't know is that Nightmare has been the old boss here the whole time, growing her gold-plated, blood-soaked entertainment empire, and she's not about to give up her grim throne without a fight. So if Shadow Bonnie was the main controlling force in both Springtrap and Glitchtrap, Security Breach could be a war between the shadows. Let's take a break from specific theories for a moment and talk about the actual art of theorizing. Our experiment with Sammy and Charlie being the shadows has been an exercise in inductive reasoning. This is the sort of creative logic police detectives use when surveying a crime scene for the first time. They don't know what happened, who did it, or even if a crime occurred when they first arrive. The first step is always figuring out what questions to ask, and what scenarios look most probable based on the evidence at hand. The first step is brainstorming, coming up with as many possibilities about what might have happened as you can. It doesn't matter how unlikely or silly the ideas might seem at first. The more possibilities you test, the more likely it is that one of your sparks will catch fire and reveal a promising area to explore. So it's best to cast as wide a net as possible. After FNAF 3, I bashed my head against a wall for 3 months while researching the Color Brothers, looking for some sort of pattern that explained why a killer kept specifically stuffing people into robots. The Punisher could find so many easier ways to off someone in a pizzeria, but smashing someone into a solid-state animatronic that wasn't already designed to be worn seemed impossible. And if Phone Guy was head of security, why wasn't he worried about so many Night Guard employees dying in his watch? And why did the company keep him on the payroll after doing such a lousy job? I first tried every sensible idea, then I tried every silly idea, and then every cartoonishly bonkers idea, until I finally tried the absolutely insane idea that a mad scientist was deliberately stuffing people to figure out how to put human souls into robots. And suddenly, something clicked. A few pieces of FNAF lore snapped together like magnets in my head to form a crystal, and I've been nurturing and growing that crystal ever since, clicking pieces of lore into place whenever they fit neatly without causing conflicts. Over half a decade later, this video shows what the crystal looks like today. It's not finished, but I think I'm off to a good start. People usually think of the pink guy when mentioning my theories, but that phrase was actually coined by the two Ryans of 8-bit gaming. I have their video to thank for drawing my attention to the sprite difference, and I've built upon that lead ever since. But my real, original breakthrough in the Color Brothers was the mad scientist theory. It never hurts to try silly ideas. Mystery writers love working improbabilities into their stories, so you never know what will cause inspiration to strike. Inductive reasoning is about figuring out what questions to ask. It won't give you a solid proof like traditional deductive reasoning will, but deductive reasoning involves testing a theory you already have, while inductive reasoning is about coming up with theories in the first place. You never only use one. The two are designed to work together. If you've ever played one of those suspect interview games like Her Story, you know that figuring out the right questions to ask is the only way to progress. So search for every keyword you can think of. It doesn't matter how many dead ends you try. All that matters is figuring out how to move forward. Whenever someone thinks outside the box, they're using inductive reasoning. Let's explore a specific case in greater detail. Remember our friend Scabbers the Rat / Peter Pettigrew? When this reveal first happened in the Harry Potter books, it seemed to come out of nowhere, like a hastily applied ex deus machina. Many people couldn't believe what had happened, and wrote this twist off as a cheap trick. But what would you say if I told you it was possible to figure out who Voldemort's spy was and their human identity long before this dramatic reveal, without even seeing their name on the Marauders map? Here's a list of things we learned before the reveal. Each element here might seem weak and inconclusive on its own, but watch what happens when you put all of them together. Voldemort had a spy so close to Harry that they could even report back what Harry said in his sleep. Harry's dormitory was warded against magical espionage, so the spy would have to be a living creature who was actually regularly present in Harry's bedroom during the night. The only other known human lodging in Harry's room was Ron, and it seemed inconceivable that Ron himself could be the spy. The only other two living creatures in that room were Harry's owl Hedwig and Ron's rat Scabbers. Hedwig seemed, for all intents and purposes, to be a normal animal familiar, but Scabbers was very weird. It wasn't just that Scabbers was 12 when most rats lived only to 3 years old. Scabbers kept running off for long periods, repeatedly refusing Ron's summons. In a class where students were trying to transfigure their animal familiars, Ron's attempts to change Scabbers always fell short. The easy, obvious reason we were led to believe for why Ron's spells didn't work was that Ron was just a stupid wizard who couldn't cast the simple spell correctly. But another potential, if far less likely, possibility was that the target of Ron's spells was much more complex than he realized. Beware easy answers in a mystery, they make the best red herrings. We'd already been introduced to the idea of any magi from the example of Professor McGonagall. They were wizards who could each turn into a specific animal. Once a concept has been introduced in one part of a world, it can show up again anywhere else in that world without warning. So once we know any magi are out there, and the clues that might reveal someone is one, we should actively look for ones we don't know about. Harry's dad and two of his friends were any magi, and would often transform to accompany Remus Lupin on adventures when he turned into a werewolf. They signed the Marauders map Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, putting all their nicknames together in one place. Professor Lupin was Moony, he turned into a werewolf. Padfoot was Sirius Black, he turned into a dog. James Potter was Prongs, he turned into a buck deer, which left the last remaining alter ego, Wormtail, for Peter Pettigrew. And having a segmented worm-like tail is one of the standout features of a rat. So there was at least one identified rat animagus in the world. Whenever a mystery hands you something detailed and particular like this, you should always check to see if it contains a puzzle. The shocking twist that Scabbers was Peter Pettigrew wasn't some spur-of-the-moment retcon. It was a masterfully hand-carved mystery that JKR had been building up since the very first book. And although getting blindsided by it hurt my pride, I had only myself to blame, because the Scabbers puzzle was fair and solvable before its reveal. I call constructs like this a web of evidence, a case not made from one big clue, but the picture of several smaller clues formed together. Individually, each of the Scabbers clues didn't tell us much, and they could easily be overlooked. But together, they make an ironclad argument that Scabbers must have been Voldemort's spy. A web of evidence is fragile, though. If you tear out any given thread, the entire construct can fall apart. So the moment I arrogantly judged Scabbers being 12 years old to be a mistake rather than a clue, I immediately lost the game, because I blinded myself from seeing a vital clue to solving the case. But there are several reasons why many people, including myself, were stumped by Scabbers. It required someone to realize the puzzle even existed and to start actively looking for an answer. And then it required the reader to ask a question that, on the surface, seemed silly and insane. Was Ron's goofy and pathetic pet rat secretly a shape-shifting supervillain? Be afraid, be very slightly afraid. It's the sort of daft question your friends might make fun of you for days for even asking. And it's the very last place any professional left-brain theorist who wanted to stay within the realm of probable, respectable, scientific-sounding, and safe inquiries would look. Which is the very reason J.K. Rowling put it right there. Mysteries aren't supposed to be easy, they're supposed to be complicated, and challenge readers to think for themselves and test their powers of induction and deduction to their fullest, to broaden their minds and ponder ideas they've never encountered before, instead of just agreeing with whatever their friends or community leaders think and revisiting the ordinary. I see mysteries like this as works of art, and it's my hope that by making videos like this one, I can get other people to fully understand and appreciate them too. Unfortunately, the more hardcore and intricate a mystery is, the harder it is for people to make headway on it, and the more tempting it is for frustrated theorists to throw up their hands in despair and claim that they can't be wrong because no answer exists. I can fully understand why it might be comforting to believe this, but every time I hear someone make such a claim about an intricate mystery, I feel a sense of sadness and dread inside, as if something precious in the world had been lost. Theorizing is not an easy or safe profession. I've already been called crazy more times than I can count. While researching FNAF, I went on a few other quests, and once had someone yell in my face that Steven Universe was nothing but a collection of non-sequitur crap. A mishmash of random details thrown together without rhyme or reason. A ball of excrement, surrounded by a beautiful candy-colored shell, which was then gleefully sold to children for profit. And none of my insane theories would change their mind. Especially not something ridiculous, like claiming that Steven had pink diamond's powers, but everyone knew Steven's mother had simply shattered that demonic gem. I look at the stupid things I'd cite as so-called evidence. Steven animates a bunch of watermelons with his magical spit that then grow to look like him. Then his fool father wakes up from his dazed nap and smashes his foot right into the stomach of one of them. And then the fast-moving cartoon weirdly pauses and spends about 10 seconds just staring at the extreme close-up of Greg's disgusting leg. And witness the evidence! As a pink piece of watermelon gore that had once been inside Steven's stomach, where his gem would be, of course, is now sticking to Greg's leg. And wouldn't you know it? It's shaped like a diamond! A pink diamond! This insane ferret's mad theories are held together by nothing more than a gourd as empty as his own. Naturally, this was before the reveal in A Single Pale Rose that showed Pink's shattering was actually staged, and that Steven was directly related to Pink Diamond and did have her powers. So I can't blame the guy for calling me crazy at the time, since my theories flew in the face of the expectations of 99% of the Steven Universe fandom back then, just as my FNAF theories do now. But claiming my entire case was nullified just because one piece of cited evidence seemed flimsy wasn't doing my theories justice. The melon bit on Greg's leg was only one item of a whole network of clues that pointed in this direction. Let's do another Scabbers-like breakdown and build the web of evidence for why Steven must have had Pink Diamond's powers. Gems of the same type share the same set of potential powers. Many rose quartz soldiers were grown on Earth. They were very common. But only the rose quartz, Steven's mother and leader of the crystal gems, had the power to heal. Steven learns this when he shows his belly gem to Eyeball the Ruby and claims to be Rose, but Eyeball isn't impressed. She'd seen many gems like it before and didn't believe this kid was the legendary dreaded rebel commander. But when Steven healed Eyeball, suddenly she believed the story completely, and thanked Steven by trying to kill him for the glory of Homeworld. Healing was not a power rose quartz soldiers innately possessed. And Rose's healing ability was listed as an advantage the small group of rebels on Earth had over Homeworld's galactic empire. No gems in white, yellow, or blue Diamond's court had the power to heal, including the diamonds themselves. Steven's mother was the only gem in the whole universe with the power to heal. A unique power could only exist in a unique type of gem. But there only were 4 unique gems, the 4 diamonds, the leaders of Homeworld. And of the 4 of them, only Pink Diamond wasn't accounted for. The very diamond that Steven's mother supposedly shattered. Even though it was very strange that Rose could walk right up to Pink's palanquin without being challenged, while Pink was surrounded by all the gems of her court, who all saw Rose approaching without being alarmed, like they expected Rose to be an ally instead of an enemy. Pink Diamond was part of the fusion known as Steven Universe from the beginning. She even has her own giant gem on the gem door, a circle just like the ones levitating above Pink Diamond's shoes. A huge circle, dwarfing all the others on the door in power. An icon appropriate of the Crystal Gem's true founder and one of the 4 most powerful beings in the universe. Then there's Cookie Cat, who travels to Earth carrying a bindle with pink diamonds on it in the pilot episode. Steven summons his shield for the very first time after eating a Cookie Cat ice cream sandwich, and then believes, irrationally, that Cookie Cat is the source of his power. Unfortunately, this brand of ice cream isn't made anymore, and the gems bought Steven a cooler that contains all the cookie cats remaining in the world. And Steven eats all the rest when the gems are in danger, desperately looking for a way to help. When Centipedal's attack shatters Cookie Cat's freezer, Steven avenges his fallen feline confection icon by wielding their power to zap the monster with surprising potency. And yet, despite being officially dead and discontinued, Cookie Cat's image still follows Steven throughout the entire series, as if his destiny was somehow still entwined with theirs. As if Steven and Pink Diamond's destiny had been one all along. Who would guess that a fat kid's rap who buzzed out of his mind in a sugar rush could give us Pink Diamond's backstory? It certainly doesn't sound like a safe theory, and yet the last episode references this very song, revealing the staggering amount of forethought that went into the pilot episode all those years ago. I freely admit the melon gore on Greg's leg was weak evidence, and could never be used as part of any proof made with left-brain deductive reasoning. But for someone who already had the theory that Pink Diamond's power was inside Steven, it acted as a reinforcement, a piece of inductive reasoning evidence that increased the probability this theory was on the right track. Stopping everything to pause the cartoon for 10 seconds just to stare at the watermelon gore on Greg's leg was a very weirdly deliberate decision by the Crooniverse. Whenever an artist does something strange for reasons only they know, I always wonder what those reasons might be. After punching myself in the face by arrogantly assuming 12-year-old Scabbers was a silly editing mistake, I vowed never to underestimate an artist again. So I've become very reluctant to discard any detail in a mystery, no matter how small or silly it seems, without due process. When we start a project like Harry Potter, Steven Universe, or FNAF, in the beginning, we know nothing. So who are we to judge if something is irrelevant before giving it a chance? An artist can use literally anything as a symbol. For example, whenever oranges appear in the Godfather movies, it means someone is about to die. But you'd never realize this until you watch the movies several times and notice the pattern. Who would ever assume produce could be so deadly? So, whenever a theorist immediately assumes some odd detail is irrelevant just because they think it's stupid, they're making an assumption without evidence and derailing their own quest for answers. Time and time again, other theorists I've argued with have tried to short-circuit my theories by claiming the details they're built on shouldn't matter, even when I've shown them how those details might be important in the very theory they're trying to debunk. Whenever this happens, I remember the proud fool I used to be, who thought he could erase a piece of Harry Potter lore from existence simply because it displeased him, as if my ignorant declaration was somehow more important than J.K. Rowling's text. Any time an artist does something deliberately, it matters, and we should assume that it does matter and is relevant until we can prove otherwise. The weird little details in a mystery are part of that story's DNA, and theorists have to sequence that DNA if they want to find the real answers. You can try ripping out chromosomes you don't like, but all you'll end up with is a monster of your own making. Scabbers was a solvable mystery. Steven was a solvable mystery. And, if I might be so bold, FNAF is a solvable mystery, too. If I'm wiser or more perceptive now than I used to be, I have my Scabbers PTSD to thank for it. Making mistakes can be a compelling learning experience. A responsible theorist will shrug off any shame, acknowledge their mistakes, and learn from them to do better in the future. This is why I'm still here, still researching FNAF half a decade later, still defending silly unpopular ideas like the pink guy not being William, or at least not the version of William most people think. And I already know it's going to get worse before it gets better, because I still have to tell Mystery Kid's story after this chapter. I already know how some will react to my theories about him, but I still think it's irresponsible to leave him out. Because I believe FNAF is a masterful mystery, every bit as hardcore as Harry Potter and Steven Universe. And just like them, it's also been underestimated and misunderstood in turn. FNAF has a unique hidden story, still waiting and deserving to be told. I might just be a little ferret, but I'm going to do what I can to see that this happens. Thank you for putting up with my monologue. Now let's get back to FNAF. The theory that a vengeful dark side of Charlie secretly took over Phasma Entertainment and controlled events from the shadows for years is certainly a complex, radical idea. And while this crazy theory does seem to stack with FNAF's chaotic lore surprisingly well, we have only established a high probability that this idea is right. There are still a lot of questions we have to answer about Nightmare/Shadow Freddy. We've tracked her repeatedly biting Michael and Fredbear, commanding the sister location facility as Yendo/dummy voice, and being recombined with Puppet Charlie by their father in Pizzeria Simulator in Lefty. But where did Shadow Freddy come from? We don't know where her story starts yet, or why she's so angry at, well, everyone. I can understand why Charlie would be mad at Michael. He could have stopped the other TK children from locking her outside, but he didn't, and this gave the Magenta Man/Pink Guy his chance to strike. If William Afton did indeed kill JJ Charlie at some point in time, it would make sense for Shadow Freddy to hold a grudge against him. But why would Shadow Freddy be cruel to Henry, her own father? The one who made her so many toys and was so nice to her, at least in the Mirror Universe novels. We still don't know the exact circumstances of Cassette Man's disappearance after Fredbear's closed around 1983, but it seems a little sus that Shadow Freddy would gain control of Fazbear Entertainment immediately after adult Henry disappeared, and then made so many changes that were lethal to the Night Guards. Shadow Freddy already controlled the FNAF 2 location in 1987. Phone Guy was already taking orders from her, if reluctantly at times, so Shadow Freddy would have no need to get rid of Phone Guy. He was playing a loyal, subservient role as a Night Guard before FNAF 1, but she devoured him anyway. And then played the recording of his death for William on Night 4 to taunt and horrify her grandfather. But it was more than just taking over the family business and getting back at William for whatever it was he did to her. JG Charlie was actively cruel to Phone Guy. To add insult to injury, she left Teen Henry's version of Foxy intact, but sealed him away behind an out-of-order sign, even though Foxy could still sprint like a champion. Shadow Freddy turned the elite stage Henry had designed to glorify Foxy at Fredbear's into a special prison where Foxy could never perform for children again. Fazbear Entertainment had the money to properly maintain all the FNAF 1 robots, and replace all the blood-soaked carpets and wallpaper every 90 days on top of that. But the new management of Fredbear's/FNAF 1 deliberately decided not to maintain Foxy, allowing his costume to rot to the point we could see his endoskeleton underneath it. Shadow Freddy's mimic of Phone Guy doesn't even call Foxy by name while mentioning him, coldly referring to Foxy as the character. No self-respecting furry would ever treat their personal avatar like this. JJ Charlie was actually willing to make a detrimental business decision and keep an animatronic permanently mothballed just to be extra cruel to the small shard of Henry's remnant it still contained. This wasn't business. This was personal. JJ/Charlie/Shadow Freddy actively hated her own father, as if Henry had inflicted some sort of terrible wound on her or someone she loved. Charlie's torment of Phone Guy was not limited to FNAF 1 and 4. Let's return to Ultimate Custom Night for a moment. That realm which looked real at first, but turned out to be directly connected to FNAF World, and also part of the domain of Fredbear/Shadow Freddy/JJ Charlie. Torture doesn't begin to describe Ultimate Custom Night. A horde of creatures mock us and drain our sanity nightly. Nightmare Fredbear takes a twisted page out of the puppet's book by saying they'll put us back together, only to tear us apart all over again. Orville vows to never release us, no matter how many times they get burned. And Nightmare vomits up the mauled remains of our soul each and every time she devours us, just so we can experience it all over again, claiming that they are our wickedness, made flesh. Not even death is an escape from this place. Nightmare Fredbear assures us that they are very real and that, this time, there is more than an illusion to fear. So we're someone who's had a run-in with Nightmare Fredbear before. We must be one of the 3 protagonists of FNAF 4, either Michael, William, or Teen Henry/Phone Guy. And now it's just a matter of figuring out which one. While almost all the characters in UCN look forward to our gruesome demise, there is one fascinating exception: Henry's wife, Ballora. Rather than being wicked and snide, Ballora seems genuinely glad to see us. She even seems to flirt with us, romantically. This would be very weird and eyebrow-raising if our protagonist wasn't her husband, Henry. Then there's the weird size of our UCN protagonist. They literally fit inside Nightmare Chica's mouth. And it's not just her mouth. Nightmare Balloon Boy remarks that we're not so big, only a bite-sized morsel, right before he crunches down on us. Whatever big shot we used to be, we seem very small now. Nightmare even says, "I'm here to claim what is left of you." We're not a full person anymore, only a soul shard of someone who used to be large. A tiny fragment of remnant, Deathly Hollow's baby Voldemort style. The puppet says she recognizes us, but isn't afraid of us, at least not anymore. The puppet helped put Michael back together after he was bitten. The puppet didn't attack Purple Guy and save them, and he didn't attack her either. The puppet wouldn't be afraid of either Uncle Michael or Grandfather William, but Phone Guy never liked that puppet thing. The puppet has to reassure our UCN protagonist that she doesn't hate him, but the puppet is a benevolent creature. What reasons might she have to hate him? All of this would match perfectly if our protagonist was Phone Guy, Henry's remnant-drained outgrown teen android form, who, just like Foxy, still carried a spark of Henry's leftover remnant inside him, even after updating to his adult form with Fredbear. And just as the special Bite birthday party was thrown in Michael's honor, UCN is a personal hell built just for Phone Guy. The Dreadbear DLC for Help Wanted gave us a new character, Grim Foxy, a demonic version of Foxy who glows like Jacobani and Chica and actually has flames actively pouring out of him, as if Foxy was the one in hell, a place very much like Ultimate Custom Night. Contrary to popular belief, Shadow Freddy is not missing from Ultimate Custom Night. She's right there, as Nightmare, and Nightmare Fredbear, and Nightmarian. In fact, many characters in UCN have Baby's voice whispering in the background, almost as if she was puppeting them. At least it sounds like Baby's voice, but it could be someone we know pretending again. Our reward for surviving the brutal Ultimate 50-20 mode gauntlet is to gain a brief view of the world outside, where we find FNAF 1 Yellow Bear writhing, almost like she's in pain, even as she continues to torment the soul and/or souls trapped within her, being tortured herself in the act of torturing another. A scenario where everyone loses everything. A reminder that revenge doesn't heal wounds, only adds more wounds to the world. Shadow Freddy slowly fades into the distance of infinite nothingness as the song appropriately named Void plays, making sure that neither she nor her captive can ever heal. JJ Charlie is actually willing to sacrifice any chance of ever enjoying life again just to inflict the same pain on Phone Guy. She wants to keep this shard of her father in hell so badly, she's willing to live there herself to do it. She moved away from sound business practices a long time ago. Charlie wants to hurt her father so badly, she's willing to destroy herself to do it. And this leads us to another of FNAF's hidden yet inescapable questions. What in hell did Phone Guy do to deserve all this? Does JJ Charlie truly have no compassion towards her father at all? To validate this particular theory model, we need to figure out what Phone Guy's unforgivable sin was. And Ultimate Custom Night keeps reminding us of the one you should not have killed, confirming that all this abuse is aimed at one particular person who killed one particular victim. And occasionally, we catch flashes of a maniacally grinning boy brightly radiating both green and red colors. A set of colors that work well for both Green Plush Trap Kid and Red Balloon Boy, two different versions of Charlie's twin brother, Sammy. This stacks with other elements of FNAF lore. The Fun with Plush Trap / Balloon Boy minigames reveal a shocking hidden detail. Something did happen to Sammy. Fun with Plush Trap / Balloon Boy is part of FNAF 4's memory constructs. William is fitting Offspring Bonnie on the night of Save Them as the main part of this experience, but another memory is mixed in with this one. Carefully study what happens when we catch Plush Trap with a flashlight in the lower right-hand door. The long, dark rabbit shadow looming behind him is certainly creepy, but when Plush Trap retreats, he reverses straight backward despite having a posture flush against the floor. How could someone even move like that? It's almost like someone grabbed his ankles and yanked. This odd movement is even more striking with Nightmare BB. He retreats so swiftly and suddenly that his head actually bashes against the ground. Ghosts can do some crazy things, but I doubt BB intended to smash his own skull against the floor. Unless it wasn't him doing it. Remember how Sammy was afraid of the soul-absorbing robots? So much they didn't accompany Charlie / Cassidy to the Take Cake party? Sammy didn't want to become a robot, and yet he did become one in the end. Because BB and JJ are both little twin robot kids, who grew into teens over the same period of time. This means both twins were converted into androids around the same time. Sammy must have also been grabbed by someone near the time the Magenta Man attacked Charlie. Sammy didn't want to become a robot, yet here he is, the traditional immortal Afton android child, his remnant now broken into pieces after upgrading into several older models, leaving his earlier forms behind, still animated by pieces of his now fractured soul. A fate that Sammy didn't choose, a fate that someone else chose for him. Someone did kill Sammy, someone they should not have killed, just as someone killed Charlie and turned her into a robot also. And Shadow Freddy seems to lay the blame for Sammy's death at Phone Guy's feet, blaming Sammy's own father for the crime. Considering all her efforts to torment Michael, I doubt Charlie would be this driven to avenge him if something terrible happened to Freddy Boy. But avenging her own innocent baby twin brother makes a lot more sense. Twins are closer to each other in a way that few creatures can be. Identical twins were once literally part of the same egg, and in Sammy and Charlie's novel baby pictures, it's challenging to tell them apart without looking at their clothes. So it's easy to understand why Charlie might have such a visceral reaction to someone attacking her twin brother. In a way, they also attacked her at the same time. This could explain why novel Charlie might misremember Spring Bonnie abducting her brother when it actually abducted her instead. The protagonist of UCN was definitely the person who killed Sammy. And yet, our viewpoint character in UCN is different from the one in Fun with Plushtrap/Balloon Boy, because we view Fun with Plushtrap from William's perspective, and William saw someone else grab Sammy by the ankles and drag him away. So, our Ultimate Custom Night protagonist was also present in FNAF 4, and isn't William or Michael. By elimination, Phone Guy/Teen Henry is the last best candidate to be Sammy's murderer. Although, murderer might not be the correct word. For most of us, seeing someone throw a child into a high-tech modern version of the medieval Iron Maiden torture device would be a pretty clear-cut example of evil. But how would a mad scientist view this scene? Repeatedly, getting stuffed into a robot is considered a gift in FNAF, the gift of eternal life as a robot. Sure, ending your human life is part of this process, but getting stuffed isn't the end of your story. An android child could easily live far longer than a biological one could. So, in a twisted way, a mad scientist's father might not consider having their own child chewed up inside a robot whose interior was lined with knives evil. They wouldn't be killing their child, they would be ensuring the extended life of their child by vaccinating them against death. And their child would end up in a form far more durable and powerful than their human body before. While the special Afton family synthetic flesh formula could restore all their human functionality and even restore the appearance they had before the conversion. They could do anything as an android that they might do as a human, and more. Who wouldn't accept such a gift? Only a foolish child who didn't know what was best for them. So while we might recoil at the thought a father could stuff their own children, it's not beyond the realm of possibility in FNAF. We've covered a lot of territory in this chapter, so let's do another quick recap of our timeline so far. In the past, Grandfather William escaped an abusive family back in England as a kid and took animatronic technology to the US. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place was founded in 1972 and was the first restaurant where Take Cake to the Children happened. Fredbear's Family Diner opened around 1982, just before the new Freddy's. The new and improved Freddy's FNAF 2 building opened for the first time in summer 1983. Shadow Freddy drove Fredbear into the back room to bite young Michael as part of the MCI, turning him into Golden Freddy. The puppet put the MCI children back together as well as she could. She put young Henry, young Sammy, and young Mystery Kid into their personal robots, while stuffing young Charlie into the only robot left, Freddy. FNAF 2 then closed for the first time because of the health issues created by the stuffed robots. Fredbear's Family Diner closed shortly afterward, and its designer, Adult Henry/Cassette Man, mysteriously disappeared for decades. FNAF 2 reopened in November 1987 when Fredbear's was already an old restaurant from the past. The Save the Massacre happened on William's shift, requiring him to shut down the possessed Spring Bonnie suit with a flashlight. The Bite of 87 happened to Jeremy/Michael Afton during the last day FNAF 2 was open. William came back as Fritz Smith, using a fake name to get rehired by Fazbear Entertainment. Fredbear's reopened as the FNAF 1 building sometime before 1992. Phone Guy was the first night guard, and he was devoured by Yellow Bear before FNAF 1 began. William re-infiltrated Fazbear Entertainment under the name Mike Schmidt to act as the FNAF 1 night guard. Sometime later, William returned to the now run-down FNAF 1 building to try and free the kids' spirits from the robots, but the shadows forced him to take refuge in the spare Spring Bonnie suit, which was already possessed by RWQ, who trapped him in the spring suit to form the fusion Springtrap with him. Now that Michael was bitten, Phone Guy was devoured, and William was springtrapped, Shadow Freddy held their souls prisoner in FNAF 4's Matrix. Michael finally died for real at the end of FNAF 4 and was absorbed into Shadow Freddy's main world, FNAF World. Golden Freddy took over control from Shadow Freddy just long enough to tell Michael about the clocks and another way out of the Matrix. Michael armed the minigames of FNAF 3 in the process of escaping FNAF World, then took the Up portal out of the digital realm to return to the real world. Michael woke up on the stage of FNAF 1 as the endoskeleton inside Freddy, where the puppet helped him escape from behind Shadow Freddy's mask. It seems the robots had been reassembled after William tore them apart. Fredbear's opened a third time as Chica's Party World. JG Charlie brought back her favorite character Chica as the mascot this time, making Funtime Chica the star. The survival logbook was likely published around this time. Both Freddy and Foxy appear in the clean FNAF 3 office inside. After Chica's party world, Shadow Freddy ordered her brother RWQ to take Springtrap back into the secret room, and sealed Sammy and William together once again. 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors, most likely a reference to FNAF 1 from 1992, Phone Dude invited Michael back to the fourth opening of Fredbear's, Fazbear's Fright. On night 1, the secret room was still sealed, but the arcade machines from the secret room were already out on the restaurant floor. Someone who claimed to have designed one of the buildings sent Phone Dude a tip about the secret room without identifying himself further. Adult Henry/Cassette Man designed the original Fredbear's. He created the special stage for his previous avatar, Foxy. This tip most likely came from him. Here, the timeline branches. If Michael had successfully found and unlocked the secret minigames, Happiest Day would have happened. A ghost who never got a birthday party would have gotten one, and the children's spirits would have been freed on night 5. This would have been the good ending. If Michael failed to activate Happiest Day, FNAF 3 progressed to night 6 and ended with a fire. The bad ending where the children were not freed. The fire ending continues on to Sister Location, where the now freed William gave Michael the mission to infiltrate Fazbear Entertainment once again under the fake name Eggs Benedict. Again, there seem to be two endings. The scooped ending where Ennard hollowed out Michael and used him as a vehicle to finally escape the Sister Location facility after years of torture, and the private office ending, where Michael holds off Ennard until 6 a.m., then returns the chip he took from Scooped Baby to Ennard's amalgam, reinstalling the removed good aspect of Baby that Ennard had hoped to destroy. Ennard follows Michael home in that ending, and they both watch the finale of The Immortal and the Restless together, while Michael eats popcorn. The scooped ending has Michael smuggle out the Ennard amalgam and throw it up into the sewer. It then splits into Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, as detailed in the conversation between ScottGames.com and FNAF World. This timeline leads to the FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator, where Adult Henry finally returns and turns the original 1972 pizza place into a death trap for the escaped robots. But despite HandUnit's claim that Fazbear Entertainment was no longer a corporate entity at the end of FNAF 6, something survived. A scan of some of Springtrap's components led to the introduction of Glitchtrap as a digital entity that had the power to possess people who used the VR program. And he seems to have possessed both Tape Girl and Jeremy. It's possible that other entities survived FNAF 6 and made it to the modern era as well. Shadow Freddy appears again in both Help Wanted and Special Delivery. However, she's usually disguised as either Freddy or Golden Freddy. And Shadow Freddy/Nightmare's Claw appears in a teaser for Security Breach. Security Breach will likely feature a Quentin Tarantino-style mobster showdown between the new invaders Glitchtrap and Vanny and the old boss, Nightmare/Shadow Freddy. So, all things considered, our timeline seems to be coming along nicely. But there are still pieces of lore we need to find and more refinements to the timeline that we can make. So before we dive headlong into the famous events of 1983 and 1987 in the next chapter, there is one more location I'd like to visit first. Another dream restaurant scarred by a murder that darkened the future for many decades afterwards. A place that was only open for one night. Circus Baby's Pizza World. The first question we need to ask is, when was Circus Baby's open? The game's sister location is far in the future after the fire of FNAF 3. The house fire from The Immortal and the Restless and Springtrap leaving the burned shell of Fazbear's Fright date sister location at some point after the fire. Michael would have to talk to William to get the sister location mission, so this must be after FNAF 3. Michael also vows to find William at the end, which should be really easy if William is still stuck at Fazbear's Fright. But just because we encounter Baby and the Funtimes in the future doesn't mean that they're new robots. Funtime Chica starred in Charlie's earlier restaurant, Chica's Party World. Yet Funtime Chica appears in FNAF 6's Rare Finds auction, along with Chipper, a character even older than Freddy. The sister location robots tried to escape many times over several decades. Still, they kept getting found and put back, which is why they needed Michael's metal endoskeleton to hide in. The Fazbear Fright spokes portray Baby and Funtime Freddy as very old robots with a detailed knowledge of history. The Funtimes were made of living metal cables, animated metal spaghetti that could reshape itself as needed, and grow plastic or synthetic flesh to shield themselves. This technology seems futuristic, certainly more advanced than the toy animatronics of 1987, but close inspection of the FNAF 2 building reveals that these futuristic living metal cables were already there in the past. The FNAF 1, FNAF 2, and FNAF 3 buildings were all infested by metal cables that hang organically from the walls in varying lengths and thicknesses. They're not power cables. Most don't connect to anything at all, and they stretch through the air above the party rooms as easily as they burrow into the stone floors. They almost resemble the veins inside a giant beast, as if the entire building itself were alive. Perhaps this is why Fazbear Entertainment lays low for several years after a nasty incident, then reopens the same building again under a new name. These wires are part of the Afton family network and they can't move it. But whether the buildings are alive or not, these wires must be. 2 of them dip into FNAF 2's right vent and are constantly in motion. Except there's a big problem with FNAF 2's vents. There's no wind in them to make these wires move. FNAF 3 has actual, functional vents. They stretch throughout the entire building and disperse the vapors that make our protagonists see things and pass out. But FNAF 2's vents are only a few feet long and just connect the nearest party rooms to the office. Whoever designed this building only intended for them to act as shortcuts for the robots. Well, so they put cameras and flashlights in there when they could just block access with a grate. The audio feed from these vents only detects the distant, distorted sound of the desk fan, with no other fans or rush of wind. The vents in FNAF 2 aren't real. Yet, somehow, these 2 little shoelace wires in the right vent keep moving, and they're already moving at the start of each night before any robots can bump into them. These little cables are obviously moving, but we can't find any external source of this movement. So we have to invoke Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's principle that, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth, and say these capillary cables are moving under their own power. So there you have it. The technology to create autonomously moving living metal cables of the same type the Funtime animatronics were composed of existed in the FNAF 2 building in 1987. This means the Funtimes could have been built even before 1987. The FNAF 1 building is also infested with these cables, and it was initially built as Fredbear's in 1982, around when the Fear partnership between Fazbear Entertainment and Afton Robotics first began. However, I have evidence that these metal cables and their associated Funtimes existed even before that, and it hinges on Circus Baby's sudden redesign just before her restaurant launched. Baby was supposed to be Elizabeth's alter ego, her robot guardian, her avatar, her second self, her Horcrux animatronic, the key to her robotic immortality, the companion spring suit she can put on again and again to update her backup copy. Baby was designed to stay with Elizabeth all her life and assist in upgrading each of her future android forms. Circus Baby was the robot William Afton custom-made for his own daughter Elizabeth, the greatest gift he was able to give her other than life itself. And like all the other Afton robots, Baby was only intended to be worn by her own child. But somewhere between when William designed Baby and Circus Baby's Pizza World launched, everything changed. And Baby's primary purpose was altered. Because on that fateful day, William gave Elizabeth an unbelievable, impossible order to never, under any circumstances, approach Circus Baby, the very robot he had made only for her. Elizabeth couldn't understand, and said so. It was madness letting every other child in the world see Baby except for her. It was impossible. Baby was supposed to be hers. Baby was supposed to be her. Elizabeth could not follow this insane command, so she snuck off while William wasn't looking, and happened to be the single child left in the room with Baby, and was lured in and devoured by her. William never intended for Baby to kill Elizabeth. If he did, why wait until Baby was in the middle of a building filled with children instead of having it happen quickly and quietly in an abandoned lab, like in the Mirror Universe novels? Why would William specifically warn Elizabeth to never go near Baby if he intended for Baby to kill her? William might have built Baby first, but the Baby that rolled out that day at Pizza World was not the one he designed. Her programming had been changed, infected with foreign code, which is why Baby's voice remembered being constantly compelled to count the number of children in the room. And then, when there was only one, she was suddenly no longer herself as her Lauren Harvest attack programming kicked in, forcing her to do something she did not want to do. Someone changed Baby's design. Her blueprints still show the air hose in her arm that was supposed to connect to the helium tank inside her to inflate balloons, but there's no sign of that helium tank on her blueprints anymore. It was taken out, presumably so Baby's killer claw could be put in instead. Aftons are supposed to wear their spring suits voluntarily. William Dave Afton from the novels even showed off his personal spring suit wounds with pride. Baby was supposed to be a vehicle Elizabeth could get in and out of at will, the way Gregory climbs in and out of Glamrock Freddy in the security breach teasers. That bandage on his face is probably a springlock wound, something he gets every time he enters his personal spring suit animatronic. Afton animatronics had no need for a killer claw to force people to enter them, but Baby had one on launch day regardless. Because just like all the other fun times, someone other than William turned Baby into a monster. Remember how the sister location robots begged, "Don't hold it against us"? All the Funtimes were intended to be vessels for members of the Afton family, and except for Funtime Chica, all of them were possessed. But who would want to spend eternity in a machine designed to kill people and devour their souls, and then have those very souls absorbed by the living metal of their stomachs torn out every night for collection, disemboweling them over and over and over again without end? No wonder the robots wanted to escape. Getting shocked regularly was the least of their problems, and as the trailer's sister location declared, suicide didn't work. The downside of being an immortal robot is that death is not an escape for you. The captured members of the Afton family did not want to be there doing that. Yet, once they got free, their programming still compelled them to seek out children for harvesting, something that Henry knew, and explained with his child decoy robots and pizzeria simulator, to lure them back to the original restaurant building again, to make sure that this time they couldn't escape. William was not the one who reprogrammed Baby, but if William didn't do this, then who did? Sister Location begins with an interview between William Afton and characters identified in the voice credits as board members. They say Baby has some design choices they didn't understand and want William to explain them, but rather than answer their real questions or put on a show of defiance, William unhelpfully repeated all of Baby's secondary functions. She can sing, she can dance, she has a built-in helium tank. This prompted the board members to politely yet insistently inform William that those weren't the design choices they were curious about. Let's study this interview carefully. William isn't in control here. He's the CEO of Afton Robotics, and if these board members belonged to his company, he'd be asking them questions, not the other way around. And if these men helped build Baby, you'd think they'd already know how she worked, but they didn't. They must be from another company. This means two companies are working together at this point in time. Remember the story of the struggling restaurant? It lasted for years after Take Cake to the Children and was only run by a single company during this time, as no other company was willing to associate with them. Circus Babies must have been organized after this one company phase ended. So the window where Circus Babies could have opened must be several years after 1972's Pizza Place, but before Fredbear's opened in 1982, when Fear was fully established. Yet here we are at the interview. Circus Babies hasn't launched yet. The new company is just starting to analyze Baby's design. And if Baby had already eaten a kid, they'd have a much different set of questions to ask. Circus Babies was also launched with grand fanfare, sparing no expense for glamour and glitter, and also spared no expense for the fleet of vehicles that descended on the place right after Elizabeth's accident, tearing it all down in one night and erasing all the evidence. Both the fanfare and the cleanup crew were far more expensive than a company facing bankruptcy could afford. At least not on their own. William didn't want to deal with the foreign board members, but he had to. They were the ones with the money that could save his company. And the cancel due to leaks teaser gives us more food for thought. The entrepreneur who financed the venture was local. Someone local who wasn't William, but was a member of the family. From this point forward, Fazbear Entertainment pays all the checks in FNAF 1 and 2. And Henry's company also owned the original pizza place in FNAF 6 when he turned it into a death trap, while Scrap Trap, a version of William, spent months clawing at the walls trying to get inside. The Sister Location interview with William before Circus Babies launched was the true beginning of the Fear partnership. This is where Henry, William's eldest son, came back to town at the head of a large, affluent company and saved, quote-unquote, the family business, by giving his father William a deal he couldn't refuse, in his weakened financial state on the edge of bankruptcy. The FNAF novels present a mirror universe to the story of the games. In the novels, Henry was the master robot builder, while William was his jealous apprentice. And William was the business expert, making all the financial decisions, because Henry was too absorbed in making robots to care about money. But Henry was the businessman of the games. He's the founder and CEO of the big money-grubbing corporation Fazbear Entertainment. Henry's teen version phone guy is acting as an enthusiastic corporate drone, and the one who jealously wanted William's secrets, as William's knowledge of robotics exceeded his own. But Game William wouldn't share his deeper secrets with Henry, even after Henry rescued his father's company from financial ruin, an insult that Henry seems to have taken personally. Especially since part of the reason Henry left the family in the first place was that William had disinherited him by tapping Michael, his younger son, as the next Freddy. This is why Henry invented Fredbear in the first place, to show the world that he was better than Freddy, better than both Michael and his own father. When Henry returned, he had a lot to prove, and a lot of changes he wanted to make. Remember how the classic animatronics always had 4 fingers? Well, the Nightmare animatronics always had 5. In FNAF 4, we actually see 2 versions of Foxy. Older brother Foxy with his bright red mask that matches the MCI Foxy head, and a second person with subtly different features wearing a Foxy head more like the one we see in Foxy Go-Go. Go-Go had the version of Foxy who became Mangle, the one who had the purple eyes in Mangle's quest. Similar to, yet also opposite from the other Foxy in several ways. It had no glowing eyes, and featured sharply pointed ears instead of bulbous ones, as well as a curved jaw instead of a straight one. Similar, yet opposite. How many times have we seen this theme in FNAF by now? The MCI version of Foxy was Teen Henry / Phone Guy's robot, while the version who became Purple-Eyed Mangle belonged to his father, William. William was the one arrested for walking into the MCI room in a cartoon mascot costume, after all. He'd be wearing one of his own suits. But one of the noteworthy features of the dad version of Foxy in FNAF 4 is that he's clearly showing us that both of his hands have 4 fingers each, a rare condition that isn't likely to be an accident, considering the small number of characters we're working with in FNAF. Springtrap is the first character we saw with 5 fingers, but Spring Bonnie was part of Fazbear Entertainment's redesign of the classic character of Bonnie, a character who was remade by Henry. Spring Bonnie was very different from the original animatronic. In Ultimate Custom Night, where Nightmare is systematically torturing Phone Guy, Nightmare Freddy says something intriguing. "I am remade, but not by you, by the one you should not have killed," implying that our protagonist has remade robots before. Robots designed to kill their wearers in Funtime Chica's case, or actively devour other victims in front of them in Corrupted Baby's case. William designed his robots to protect life, not destroy it, but someone else redesigned and remade his robots. Someone who had more power in the company than William did after Fazbear Entertainment rescued Afton Robotics. William knew about the changes installed into Baby, but was powerless to stop them from being implemented, so he warned his daughter Elizabeth to never go near Corrupted Baby. And you know the rest. Nightmare Freddy says another interesting line. "No light can save you now." Scott did say he was a fan of Mega Man in an interview, a story involving 2 mad scientists, the talented good Dr. Light and the evil, jealous Dr. Wily. Dr. Wily's very first dastardly deed was reprogramming Dr. Light's amazing robots into weapons that Wily then attempted to use to take over the world. 5-fingered Nightmare Freddy seems painfully aware that the animatronics have been remade into monsters. It would make perfect sense for him to make a Dr. Light reference here, and say that Henry the jealous robot reprogrammer was not Dr. Light. Henry's corporation Fazbear Entertainment bought out Afton Robotics, and then replaced fun-loving Freddy with a twisted golden knockoff Fredbear, an avatar of corporate greed. When Fazbear Entertainment took over, they made all sorts of changes. This resulted in all the differences we've observed between the reopenings of Fredbears and the FNAF 2 building. Changes that Phone Guy assured us made this new Freddy superior to the old one. Henry and his corporation took over just before Circus Baby's Pizza World launched. This was the very beginning of the Fear Partnership. If partnership is really the right word, hostile takeover sounds more like it. Henry and William were very close to the Mirror Universe novels, but the opposite is true here in the games. Grandfather William valued family over money. William could have made a fortune if he showed the world what his robots could actually do. But if he did, the immortal Afton's secret would be known, and his android family would never be able to blend in seamlessly with humanity again. So William hid his amazing robots in plain sight under cheesy pizza mascot costumes, and counterintuitively programmed his robots to never show off their incredible free-roaming and free-thinking abilities during business hours when customers would see them. This is why free-roaming only between midnight and 6 a.m. was hard-coded into the robot's electronic DNA. This secret was so important to William that he kept it even after the misfortune of Take Cake to the Children. William preferred to suffer financial hardship rather than put his family at risk. William was not the businessman of the games. But Game Henry was a businessman through and through, and after he split with William, making money was his primary focus. Henry's robots might pale in comparison to William's, but Henry let his robots flaunt everything they could do, and the fame and money poured in, which eventually allowed Henry to take over the family business in the hopes of gaining William's technology, and with it, perhaps, the world. Remember our quest to discover who owned the original 1972 Freddy Fazbear's Pizza place? And the observation that whoever that owner was, they could not be the Magenta Man? It would be madness to stab someone in the street outside your own restaurant, especially when the owner of Freddy's would have access to the secret backroom specially designed for work the public shouldn't see. There's no longer any doubt. William was the person who brought the animatronic technology over to the US from England, and Grandfather William was the person who founded the Afton family in America and built the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place in 1972. William designed the original four-fingered Horcrux animatronics. William was the one who programmed the puppet to prevent Charlie from leaving the party on the expectation that she would get inside. And William was the one who gave Michael the gift of Freddy at that party. A party where William Afton was definitely an insider instead of an outsider. It makes absolutely no sense for Grandfather William to be the Magenta Man. William is the Dr. Light of the games. That's another reason Puppet and William don't attack each other and save them. It's not just a matter of William being Charlie's grandfather and the two being related. William created the security puppet. And the security puppet's ability to float, even before absorbing Charlie's remnant, suggests William had already put some of his own remnant into it. A picture in the back alley of Pizzeria Simulator shows an old white-haired guy, presumably Grandfather William, holding a puppet of himself. Puppet Charlie doesn't just like William, she owes him the fact that she even exists, and she still endeavors to give others the gift of life, just like her grandfather did for her. JJ Charlie might still hate William for some reason, but Puppet Charlie doesn't seem to bear any ill will towards him at all. Baby was never supposed to harm Elizabeth, or anyone else. Baby was supposed to protect William's daughter and grant her eternal life. But this didn't happen, because Baby was remade against William's wishes into a monster. In his haste to develop robotic immortality, William never realized that the soul-absorbing technology he'd spent his life perfecting to preserve life could also be used to steal souls from the innocent. But Henry and his cronies at Fazbear Entertainment did, so they redesigned William's robots to better fit their new corporate priorities, starting with Baby, who claimed William's daughter Elizabeth as her very first victim. Fazbear Entertainment is adept at covering up evidence and deflecting blame, a skill they seem to have refined through repeated practice. So while some locals questioned their story about Circus Babies being closed because of a gas leak, the public at large still bought the story. And life went on, and soon the tragedy was largely forgotten. But one man could never forget, because William knew the truth. Fazbear Entertainment hadn't just corrupted his work, they had also killed his daughter. Sometimes tragedy changes people, and this time it was William's turn. Anger, sadness, guilt, fear, rage, all of these things tormented William in the back of his mind as he and his new master, his vengeful eldest son, built Fredbears, and pretended that everything was okay. At least the family business survived, and so did the family, most of it anyway. William still got to be on stage at Fredbears, at least in a supporting role, and he still got to make children smile, even if he felt unbearably sad inside. But now and then, bad things still happened. Bad things always happened. Employees/family members died in the redesigned spring suits now and then, and Phone Guy didn't seem to care about their individual deaths at all. Tin Henry only panicked if an incident was large enough to threaten his precious company. The family that had rejected both him and his daughter could burn. So when summer 1983 came around, and Henry decided to make a new version of Freddy's, William had finally had enough. He agreed to take on an anonymous, menial supporting role in the new place as their technician and night guard. But serving Fazbear Entertainment wasn't on his mind. Instead, he was thinking of revenge. And so William went into the new and improved Freddy's with a goal in mind, of taking something from Henry of equal value to the daughter Henry took from him. And when the new Freddy's unveiled their first two golden spring suits, William saw his chance, and lured two particular children into that back room, in the hopes of making things right. But instead, William was about to make one of the gravest mistakes in his life. Chapter 4: The Birth of the Shadows.